Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Karen Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the 5:15 City Council meeting of May 9th, 2018. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Smith. Councilmember Rivera. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Weir.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Parlier.
Here.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you all for being here to engage in the civic process. We appreciate that and look forward to having a great discussion this afternoon. We are now going to have the invocation. Pastor James Ranger from New Life unfortunately was not able to make it, and so an associate from the church, Pastor Pedro Aguilar of New Life Church, will offer the invocation on behalf of the pastor. We've had the privilege of working together and serving in the community. Thank you for New Life's efforts out there and making a difference. And then following the invocation, Peter Parra, 6th grade student at Cesar Chavez Elementary School, will lead us in the pledge. Now, if I only could have half of the accomplishments of Peter. He's a straight A student, like straight A, not just one quarter, but year after year after year since he's been at the school. He's student body president. He's an avid reader and scores at the 12th grade level on the star reading test, and he's only in 6th grade. He runs track for Cesar Chavez Elementary and enjoys playing soccer and baseball. He's participated in many extracurricular activities, science fairs, spelling bees, math bowls, and he's currently training to be this year's academic pentathlon team. He is the eldest of 3, and I think his brothers are here along with his parents, and we thank you so much for being a fantastic student. Pastor, at this time, would you come forward and lead us in the invocation, please?
Let us pray. Thank you, Father, for your wonderful love, for your amazing grace, and for your mercy, Lord. Thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for this body, for everyone present here, Father God. Your word says that not to be anxious for anything, but in all things with prayer and supplication, let our requests be known unto God, and the peace of God will keep our hearts firm in Jesus Christ. We ask of that peace that surpasses all understanding to be present in everyone here at this moment, Father. Your word also says that you're our counselor and our comforter. We ask you to give us, to give this body and everybody participating today, wisdom and the guidance and the illumination that comes from you, Father God. And we just ask a special prayer upon this meeting in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor. Pastor, would you turn it around the other side so that Peter can face the flag? Peter, come on up.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and you may be seated. Peter comes from a family of public servants, and I think many of you probably have known his grandfather, Supervisor Pete Parra, and then his aunt, who also is in public service, and his entire family, so we thank them all. And if you're welcome to stay for the meeting, but don't feel obligated to stay for the entire time. You may leave any time. Here are a few guidelines to help us have a smooth meeting. We request that you turn off your phones, and in keeping with council policy, council members aren't allowed to send or receive electronic communication during the meeting. Please be courteous in the use of your cameras and videos. Applause is allowed during the presentations portion of the meeting, but it isn't allowed during the other times. And for safety reason and As a courtesy to others, no signs are allowed in the chambers. And we thank you so much for your cooperation. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first item?
Under presentations, we have a proclamation to Nick Fiddler on behalf of the American Public Works Association, Kern Branch, declaring National Public Works Week in Bakersfield during the week of May 21st, 2018.
Well, I can't quite imagine what it would be like without Public Works, but could we just see like floodwaters flowing, no road maintenance, and then those sewers, they would get a little not so good. It is an honor for me to be able to issue the following proclamation. Whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday life, whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, and whereas the quality, effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, is vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of public works officials, and whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works department is materially influenced by the people's attitudes and understanding of the importance of the work that they perform. Now, therefore, I, Karen Go, Mayor of the City of Bakersfield, do hereby proclaim May 20th through the 26th, 2018 as National Public Works Week in our city, and we urge all citizens and community organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works to our citizens and to recognize the contributions of public works officials, the contributions that they make every day to our health, to our safety, comfort, and quality of life. And it's my honor to be able to present this to our Director of Public Works, and he is responsible for many things, Mr. Nick Fiddler.
Thank you, Mayor Go, council members. As a past president of the Kern branch for the American Public Works Association, I'm truly honored to accept this proclamation. The association is a support system for the civil engineering field in the area of public works. So we also, the Kern branch is very proud of its scholarship program that we offer to the community, trying to get more students within the high school and the college communities here to come back to Kern County to work in the public works field. So again, I appreciate the proclamation, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
We have a proclamation to Tiffany Nichols, President, and Alyssa Hurtado, Honorary Junior Secretary of the American Legion Auxiliary Bakersfield, Unit 26, declaring Poppy Month during May 2018.
Thank you for joining me here today. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row by row that mark the place. That mark the place where people paid the price for our freedom. Aren't we privileged to enjoy that freedom that came with such a price? And so it is my honor as the mayor of the city of Bakersfield to issue this proclamation in our city. The mayor of the city of Bakersfield, California, has officially proclaimed May 2018 as Poppy Month in our city in recognition of the commitment of the American Legion Auxiliary to distributing memorial poppies in order to refresh the consciousness of the American people regarding the price of freedom. In recognition of the significance of the crimson poppy, symbolic of the American blood spilled defending freedom from the forces of tyranny on Flanders battlefields in World War I. And a sign of hope, a sign for peace and restoration for a world weary of war, and in recognition of our veterans as well as the families of veterans assisted by the proceeds generated by contributions of the poppies. So we thank you so much, and it is my honor to be able to present this to you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. And would you like to say a few words?
The month of May is a time to remember all the soldiers who served in the war. They sacrificed themselves, and they don't want it to be in vain, and they want you to keep on fighting. The poppy is nationally recognized as a symbol of sacrifice worn by Americans for those who served and died for our country in wars. It reminds Americans of the sacrifices made by our veterans while protecting our freedoms. Thank you.
Don't forget your proclamation. At this time, we'll receive public statements. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per topic. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, would you please give those to the clerk, and she'll give copies to the council. Please avoid any behavior that disrupts the meeting. We're very interested and concerned with your issues, but due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, the council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. If you're here to speak on hearing items 10A or 10B, now isn't the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity later in the meeting. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call the first public speaker?
Mayor, we have received 8 speaker cards this evening, 2 cards regarding downtown street closure, and 6 regarding separate subjects. The first speaker this evening is Jennifer Pitcher regarding Old Town Kern project.
Welcome. Welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, Mayor Go, members of the council. My name is Jennifer Pitcher, and I'm here today on behalf of the Old Town Kern Beautification Project Committee. We are a committee of dedicated volunteers that have been working on a beautification project since 2015. We are calling it the Old Town Kern Beautification Project. The project includes large-scale murals, electrical box murals, trash receptacles, maintenance of the trash receptacles, trees, and with your help, lighting and sidewalks. The project is approximately 2 square miles and runs from Union Avenue east to Beale and East Truxton north to Sumner. Collectively, the project has already raised over $20,000, and we haven't really tried to do much fundraising yet. It is a partnership between the Arts Council of Kern, the DBA, and the Mission. Some components of the project are being done through Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. As I mentioned, we have been working on this project since 2015, and so far we've only gotten 1 mural up, unfortunately, which was unveiled in December 2016. Since that time, we have come across multiple concerns raised by staff, and through meetings with staff, and I do want to point out in particular the City Attorney, Ginny Gennaro, who's been very accessible, and I appreciate that a lot. I wouldn't imagine a city attorney would be as accessible. We've solved what we believe to be all the city's concerns, and we are in no way trying to get out of any of the requirements by the city. I do need your help for the larger aspects of the project. As this has been pointed out, it is more of the role of the City Council and not a role of volunteers or other organizations. I'm asking that you put this project be placed as a high priority when you begin your budget discussions, which I know you'll begin soon, for fiscal year 2018-2019. I have been trying to get a date to give you a full presentation. I've been trying to do that for a while, but I haven't been able to get in front of you. The community has been extremely supportive of this project that preserves such an iconic part of our city. Businesses from all over the city and each and every one of your wards have either contributed to the project or have expressed interest in contributing to this project. Not to mention, the committee is a dedicated group of volunteers that have added so much value in their work and their other volunteer organizations. I know staff has been very concerned about ongoing maintenance costs, and we do want to solve that. We don't want the city to be obligated to ongoing costs. We've been working with the mission and the businesses in the area for maintenance, specifically of trash cans and of the trees. And I understand the city funds are limited. I don't think that problem is going to go away anytime soon, so I'm really hoping that you will consider this to be a priority for the next year. I do have a brochure for all of you, and with your help, I can get a more presentation and provide you with more information on how projects such as these actually increase sales revenue and tax revenue to the cities. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pitcher. You can just give those to our clerk. And thank you very much for your dedication and service on Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. And we invite all of you in the audience to join up, and it's all volunteers, so let's keep Bakersfield beautiful together. Next item, please.
Mayor, may I come?
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. I want to just publicly thank Jennifer Pitcher for her involvement in both Keep Bakersfield Beautiful and this Old Town Kern project. I see Tim West out there, who's been a champion for Old Town Kern for a number of years with the Neighborhood Watch there in Old Town, and I appreciate your efforts as well as those of the other committee members. Certainly, representing Old Town Kern, would like to see it revitalized as well, and have certainly worked with staff on a number of issues, from repaving Baker Street, East 19th Street, addressing some of the maintenance issues with regarding the pots and planting some additional shrubs in the area. So we continue to work on things. We haven't yet seen the budget presentation, but I look at the first page saying, the first bullet point is that the budget is developed under challenging circumstances, and clearly that's no surprise to anyone. And I think it's important to recognize the real situation we're in, and we'll continue to partner as best we can. Certainly, I would like to continue to partner, and hopefully in the future, when things get better, we can invest in significant ways. But thank you for your leadership, and I'm happy to partner and excited about all the work. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next two speakers will be speaking regarding the downtown street closure. The first speaker is Nick Hansa.
Welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. My name is Nick Hansa, and I'm a physician and also an owner of Chef's Choice Noodle Bar downtown. I thank you for the opportunity to present a concern that a lot of our downtown businesses around 19th and 20th Street has had. It arises from an event last Thursday where the streets were closed for 12 hours with really no prior notification for a 2.5-hour event. I'm not here to relitigate last Thursday. What I would like the council's attention on is to look forward. Bakersfield downtown has grown tremendously the past 10 years, from the renovation of the Padre Hotel, new businesses, offices, and even residential development. As this has continued, the availability of parking as well as the surface street alone for people to traverse downtown, we know it's a real challenge. And for us to have street closure, I really believe that we should have a process that brings a threshold to be met in order to close downtown. To this, I propose in writing, with some support by signature of some neighbors, that we would request the city adopt or at least look at this. An event should have a purpose that require these street closure and demonstrate the vital need to close these streets. It should also be able to demonstrate that it brings community benefits that outweighs the negative. The city should do an impact study and not simply grant a permit based upon someone paying a fee. I mean, a 12-hour closure, not to relitigate for a 2.5-hour event, is a little bit severe in my opinion. We really think there should be stakeholder input from the people surrounding, and of course, proper notification. Lastly, when an event is granted, we believe that the event on the street should be a success. Therefore, the support should be mandated. What do I mean? Anything from logistic like bathroom. We're going to have an additional 3,000 to 4,000 people come to an event. We need to have appropriate facilities. If we have vendors, we make sure they're safe. Just like when we do a charity event, the health department comes before the event and checks to make sure everything we present is safe. The same standard should apply to a street event downtown. Thirdly, security. The taxpayer should not be burdened with it. If we need police presence, they need towing of streets and the like, I would assume and hope that the event organizers would actually be paying the bill. And lastly, and very important, they need to have a clear plan to clean up after all of these events. I think there were a lot of successful events that's gone on in the past, and we look forward to the city and the council input on this matter. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Hansa. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Tony Castiglione regarding the downtown special event permit.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Tony Castiglione, and I'd like to thank Mayor Go and all the council members. I represent a organization, a nonprofit here in our community called Cruisin' for Charity. We've actually put on two annual events in the downtown area, and I can tell you that I am a business owner as well. Without the support of the city, the DVA, and your staff, this is not something that I do on a daily basis. It's not for profit. We are a 100% volunteer organization. And I can tell you from being behind the scenes with your staff and council members that it is a pretty lengthy process. It does cost us as a permit holder quite a bit of money, and it does not come out of the taxpayers' pockets. As the permit holdee, we did pay over $10,000 going directly to the City of Bakersfield Police Department and Streets Department to be able to shut down the streets, and we work very closely with those organizations to ensure a safe and effective event. Once again, it is 100% volunteer-based. I don't do this as a promoter. I've had to learn over the years, and I think there are opportunities to improve the process like anything else. I welcome the opportunity as hoping to be invited to put on an event again. We've been able to support local charities and give back to our community, which is the mission and the vision of our downtown car show. We were able, in the last 2 years, to give back $43,000 back to our community to organizations like the Bakersfield City Fire Burn Foundation, Kern County Honor Flight, Kern County Honor Guard, Boys and Girls Club, ADAC, Mayor, those just to mention a few. And so I would love to be invited to help staff and council members come up with opportunities of what we can do from the event coordinator side to improve the process. I think there's always going to be room for improvement regardless, but the intent is not to disrupt businesses. As a business owner myself, that is not the intent. But there is a lot of history in our downtown area, cars being a big part of that history, and I think for me and my family and those that participated in the event, there's nothing like giving back to the community and bringing 5,000 to 8,000 people in one day downtown to see businesses and be introduced to a part of our city that normally they may not have an opportunity or have any reason to come do business and hang out downtown. So I think there are opportunities where certain events do bring value to our downtown businesses. I'd love to work with them more so in order to help them capitalize on those events. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. I want to thank both of the speakers for their comments tonight. As the downtown councilman, I've been in contact with many of the local businesses regarding downtown street closures. I think it's really fortunate that we as a city are experiencing a downtown renaissance, if you will. And the revitalization efforts have really been driven not only by city investments, but also by the time, energy, and real money that have been invested by local business owners, restaurant owners, boutique owners, and those who have given so much to the downtown. That's what makes our downtown thrive. And certainly I want to be sensitive to their needs and their concerns. And so I'd like to make a referral tonight regarding the downtown street closures to staff, that staff work on some possible options for council to consider regarding a change in the code to allow for stronger, or to require stronger neighborhood outreach when it comes to street closures, possibly a signature gathering effort, but definitely also advance notification to the business owners. So I'd like to ask staff to work on that and provide it back to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Blair Budai regarding homeless services.
Good evening, Mayor Go, council members. I'm Blair Budai. I am the founder of Homeless Helpers of Kern County, which we have had 3 monthly service projects. And the focus has been to clean living areas of homeless in the Golden State Highway Canal Bridge west of Smart and Final. It's a common location, well-known location. And I also have a stake in this issue of homelessness, which I'm speaking on as one who lives very near that area and have addressed the homeless as they come into the homeless association as a problem for many years, and then had a change of heart, and I see them as people in need. And for the most part, that is truly the issue. They don't seek to harm or to cheat or steal. That's a rarity for them, as as it is among a rarity among business people. It just happens to be those that do get the press. I am very concerned with the fact that homeless have no place to go if they have a dog or a spouse. Right, a dog or a spouse, no place to go in Kern County. And that is a troubling issue, because in dealing with the homeless, who I meet with on a weekly basis, have for months now, the dog or spouse are both the most cherished relationship that these people have ongoing. And to say that we'll give you your physical needs on a temporary basis, but you have to break that bond of your most prized relationship and struggle and the stress and discomfort, to break those. The one thing that homeless don't have is the relationships, good, stable relationships, and that's the one that they do and just don't have it. I've talked with Jessica at the Homeless Collaborative, and it's a well-known, this is a barrier. This is, I would consider this, and she considers it a major barrier. There are things that are close by, Bethany House and the Mission, but no way to co-locate. I would appreciate your attention to this issue.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Eric Garreau regarding SB 54.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. My name is Eric Giroux. I've just returned from Santa Clarita, where today at 1 o'clock in the morning, after 7 hours of testimony, the Santa Clarita City Council approved a resolution against Senate Bill 54, the so-called sanctuary state law. It was very gratifying to see citizens turn out in large numbers to support the rule of law in California. And I would like to formally request that the City of Bakersfield follow suit to opt out of SB 54. There were sobering moments. We heard testimony from courageous survivors known as angel parents whose children were gunned down by illegal aliens. We heard from police supervisors whose deputies had also been gunned down by the same thugs. This action in Santa Clarita makes a total of 15 major cities and counties in California that have taken legal action against the ridiculous SB 54 legislation by Kevin De Leon and our so-called Attorney General, Javier Becerra. Specifically, the Santa Clarita City Council passed a resolution condemning SB 54, and they have also instructed their legal counsel to file an amicus curiae brief in support of the federal lawsuit against SB 54. This federal lawsuit is Complaint 18-264 in the Eastern District of California, the United States of America versus Edmund Gerald Brown. I would like to formally and respectfully request that the City of Bakersfield join the 15 cities and counties across California in this action. Specifically, I would like to request that the city direct its staff attorneys to prepare and file an amicus curiae brief in support of this federal complaint, and also approve a separate non-binding motion of support, as did Santa Clarita, for this legal action to show that our citizens and cops will be protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Susan Stone regarding Sister Cities State Meeting Invite.
Welcome, and please introduce yourself. The mic's the one on the right. You might want to pull it down.
Yep,
there you go.
Good evening. My name is Susan Stone. I'm a past president and current Wakayama co-chair of our committees for Bakersfield Sister City Project Corporation. Mayor Go and council members, I first would like to thank you all for your support of the Sister City programs in Bakersfield. I especially want to thank Mayor Go for her support and leading a delegation to Sushi this past year, along with Councilmember Sullivan. I'd like to thank Councilmember Gonzalez for his inspiration and support of a project we are working on for a November Sister Cities Festival in the Sister City Gardens Festival, the first annual one. I'd like to thank Councilmember Freeman and his wife for hosting the mayor of Wakayama's son, Daiki Obana, last March, and Councilmember Ware for his support of the Buchan Sister City program and his 2 visits to Buchan, and all of your support for everything. And I'm especially excited and want to thank everyone for your support and your financial support, especially of having a showcase for Sister City memorabilia here in City Hall. But the main reason I'm here this evening is to issue an invitation in person to you to an all-California Sister Cities meeting that Bakersfield Sister City is hosting on Saturday, May 19th at Hodell's. There will be many dignitaries there, including the President and CEO of Sister Cities International, the Chairman of the Board of Sister Cities International, and a member of their board who is also an actor, Mr. Shin Koyamada, who appeared in The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. So we have a celebrity coming as well. The meeting begins in the morning and includes continental breakfast and lunch. Mayor Go is going to be giving the welcome speech. Councilmember Ware is going to be telling those gathered there about his experiences in Buchan, and we have other wonderful plans. Professor of Philosophy Jackie Kegley from CSUB will also be speaking. The evening before, we are also holding a reception in the Sister City Gardens at 6 p.m. and then we have a dinner planned at Wool Growers. So we're trying to showcase Bakersfield to all of these other sister city organizations who will be attending. We are anticipating at least 60 people from other sister cities throughout California to attend. And I intended to have printed invitations for you, but I suddenly realized it was 4:30 and I still hadn't printed them, and I had to get down here in a hurry. So I will drop those by the clerk's office later. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone, for your service to our community and to friendship across the world. Next speaker, please.
Carrie Heilman regarding Bakersfield Symphony Orchestra.
Good evening, Mayor Go and City Council members. My name is Carrie Heilman, and I am the Executive Director of the Bakersfield Symphony Orchestra. I just wanted to take a couple minutes tonight and give you an update on our symphony. We conclude our 86th season this Saturday, May 12th, with a concert titled Russian Masters at 7:30 p.m. at Rabobank Theater. We are also happy to announce, as some of you may have seen, that our music director, Stilian Kirov, is extending his agreement into next season, which we're very excited about. Our summer band concerts in the park start on June 10th and will be every Sunday at 8 p.m. at Beale Park until July 2nd. The theme for this season for us is more than music, and we have definitely seen this reflected in our outreach programs. Our BSO Next program continues to grow and received statewide recognition this year. We had a marketing team from Sacramento attend one of our concerts and created a wonderful marketing piece highlighting what we are doing in Bakersfield with this program, which is very exciting. This past season, approximately 300 students have attended each of our subscription concerts through this BSO Next program. And over the years, the program started 4 years ago. We have given out 5,500 sponsored tickets. This year, we really wanted to concentrate on expanding the program, and we have called this the Evening of Experiences. And we have partnered with Bakersfield College and CSUB to offer tours of both college campuses before attending our symphony concerts. So this gives the students a glance at education after high school. We also have hosted dinners with partners in restaurants throughout Bakersfield. And then they get to attend a live symphony concert for free. We also had a wonderful promotional video done, which we have a cameo by Mayor Goen, which highlights all the things that we're doing with this BSO Next program. It's available on our website at bsonow.org. And we have also kept our musicians very busy with our other outreach programs. We have our Health and Healing, which has been operating all year long. Musicians play in all 3 Dignity Health locations on Tuesdays. We have our string quartet, which we call Kids Discover Music. And this quartet visited schools all throughout Bakersfield, but also hit Shafter and Tehachapi this year. And our longest standing outreach program, our Young People's Concerts, educated approximately 12,000 students this year. We have our 18-19 season brochure, which will be out at the end of June. We have exciting repertoire and guest soloists. One of the most exciting ones is Martin Chalafor, who is the LA Philharmonic's concert master. So we invite you all. The symphony is doing wonderful. We're excited about our 87th season. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Heilman. We are so fortunate as a community to have the caliber of orchestra and conductor that we do, and I hope some of you will join me on Saturday night for the Russian Masters. Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
Debbie Moore regarding pro-life statement.
Hi. Some years ago, National Geographic went up inside the womb of a woman and took pictures. Pictures within just a few weeks of conception. I've got copies of these pictures and I will pass them to you. You'll see that the child is perfectly formed within just a few weeks. I'm here because we are barbarically killing children. Either we poison them or we rip them out piece by piece. I'm here to ask you to stop this practice in Kern County. Now, I know the attorney will tell you it's going to cost us millions of dollars in litigation. Well, of all the ridiculous things I've spent my taxpayers' money on, I welcome paying money to save a child's life. I'm here to ask you to stop this. Now, in Germany, there was a Holocaust. Only a few people in Germany stood to protect the Jews. We are now living in a Holocaust. I'm going to give you the evidence and then ask, are you going to be innocent of the shedding of blood?
Thank you for your comments. You can pass them. Okay, thank you for receiving those. Next item, please, Madam Clerk.
Under workshops, item A, we have fiscal year 2018-19 proposed budget overview.
Mr. Tandy.
Honorable Mayor and members of City Council, the City Charter directs the Office of City Manager to prepare an annual budget for your consideration between now and the second meeting in June. You'll be having 2 Monday half-day workshops. You will be having items on each of the agendas, statutory requirements, hearings, variety of actions, and then at the end of June, as always, you'll be asked to adopt the budget. I'm going to tell you now that those of you who've been on a while, the budget looks pretty much like the budget has looked the last 3 years or so. The departments are going to stand up and say my budget's up 2.1% or 3.2%, primarily due to purse cost increases and inflation. As you are aware, we are in a set of circumstances which is not optimal as far as our projected financial future. To that end, you have directed staff to go out and consult with the community on a prospective tax measure. We've been doing that. I think we're at 7 or 8 presentations. I think we have 8 or 10 more booked. And that is a continuing process. And it's valuable because each time we go, we receive feedback that's useful and allows us to further evolve the proposal and the discussion. It's not going to be at the end of this calendar year, same old, same old. We had state action that resulted in giving us more road money, but there's an initiative petition on the ballot to rescind that. We have the potential, although not yet the certainty, that the City Council will place a ballot measure on for consideration to generate additional income. But there's also an initiative petition being circulated in the state that would change the rules relative to that. It's going to be a boring budget presentation over the next few weeks, but an exciting time between now and November. Chris Huot leads the budget team. I think he has for 7 years now. We do it, of course, all the departments, all of the business managers and the department heads are involved, but we have a group that Chris will recognize a bit later that sort of leads and facilitates, and it's a very effective process. We're in our 18th year, I think, of receiving a national award for the quality of our budget document and its comprehensiveness. It is not based on whether we have as much money as we would like. The award is not. And we're also going to be talking about something Councilmember Freeman requested during the year, which is at least a fledgling version of what the budget really should be. So with that, I thank you, and I'll introduce Chris Huot.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Chris Huot, City Manager's Office. Tonight I'm going to be briefing you with an overview of the proposed budget for fiscal year 19. This presentation is intended to provide you an eagle-eye look at the budget for next year, and as Mr. Tandy mentioned, over the coming weeks the departments will be before you with more detail about their accomplishments over the last year, the goals for next year, operating budget changes, and capital projects. So with that, I'm going to start by telling you that the budget was developed under very challenging circumstances, but what we have before you is a balanced budget that reflects what has been the city's longstanding commitment to conservatively budgeting resources that are available to us. We've seen over the last year or so some sales tax trends that are positive given the fact that we have been in sort of a downturn. So we've seen a small stabilization, but not enough to call it a trend. Really doesn't give us the ability to address a lot of the needs of the organization as we've seen growth continue over the last year at about 1.1%, and this is figures that have just been released by the California Department of Finance. What I have here on the right is just a snapshot to give you an idea of population growth since 2000 for these years. So you've seen we're up about 57% to 386,000, almost 387,000 residents. We're continuing to be impacted by the minimum wage increases that the state, through state law, we're going to see about $300,000 organization-wide in 19. CalPERS rates, as we've talked about before, these are the CalPERS employers' costs that the city is obligated to pay. We're projecting a $5.7 million increase next year, which essentially limits our ability to look at other areas within the organization to deal with some of the growth and some of the service delivery areas that we would like to improve. Again, you're going to see those department budgets coming before you over the next several weeks that talk and speak to that. We don't have any significant changes to department budgets other than that. I'll just let you know that up front. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but that's essentially what we're doing right now is no significant changes with this proposed budget. We've showed you this slide several times before. This is the city's estimated PERS payments through 2024-25. So again, you'll see what our estimates are for the current year, which is that first red line towards the left, and you see that stair-stepping over the course of the next several years based upon the information that we have from CalPERS today. We are proposing the addition of 6 full-time staffing positions. I have to highlight the fact that they're all in non-general fund operations. They're mainly due to growth in our enterprise funds, and I'll get into detail in some of those in just a moment. Simultaneously, we are seeing our employee count per 1,000 residents continue to decline. We're going to be under 4 this year, and I've given you a snapshot of how that's trended over time. Again, if we go back to 2013, there was a study done at that point in time that indicated the city of Bakersfield had one of the leanest staffing to population ratios out of 107 cities in the United States that were analyzed. That has continued, as you see, to erode. It does impact service levels and response times. We do anticipate that in a majority of cases, those will remain strained over the next year, as they have been over the last several years. Each year, we like to update you on some of the major industries that drive the city's economy, one being oil. And we look at a few different economic indicators within the industry, and I'll go into detail about both of these charts. The one on your left, the line chart there is tracking 2 different things. It's tracking simultaneously the price per barrel of oil, which is the orange and bluish lines, and then it's tracking countywide oil related employment within the county. And so what we try to do is marry those up to see how things are trending. What we're seeing is since January of 16, a decent recovery in the price per barrel of oil, up around $70 a barrel, which is great news. What we're not seeing just yet is a recovery in the job side of things, which again impacts the city's budget because as more people are hired and employed, they are out making purchases, stimulating the economy. And so we're just not seeing the recovery in the jobs as of now. The chart on the right is also an indicator for us. What it is, it's the active rig count in the county. It's a measurement of the rigs that are out there drilling for oil. At the height of the $100 per barrel of oil in 2014, we saw about 20 active rigs during this time in May. It's decreased the last few years as the price of barrel per oil has gone down. Lately, it's recovered to about 50% of what it was. Still not where we'd like it to be, but we've seen a little bit of an uptick. But again, that jobs line is just not ticked up where we'd like it to be. I did mention that we are proposing to add 6 positions to the complement for next fiscal year. This is a summary of these changes. We do have one proposed deletion of a vacant clerk typist position in the city attorney's office due to some reorganization. So it's a net addition of 5 to the complement as proposed. The solid waste equipment operator in the refuse fund to help with routes related to growth for the city. 2 fleet mechanics in the fleet division. We are experiencing a little bit more downtime in some of our equipment due to, again, deferring over the last several years of replacement. And so these mechanics will assist mainly on the refuse side of things in the enterprise fund with helping keep our refuse trucks on the routes and out of the garage. A motor sweeper operator, again, we have not increased the complement of the motor sweeper operators, even though the size of the city has grown in the area in which they're responsible for. Sweeping the streets has increased, and this will do that. I believe it's the first time in about 10 years or so that we've been able to recommend that. Maintenance craft worker, this is for the city-owned municipal airport out off Union Avenue. We have seen an increase in need for an on-site full-time staff member as opposed to the part-time work that's being done out there in response to needs that arise throughout all hours of operation. And then finally, the growth and development within the city has necessitated additional inspections for permits and hazardous infrastructure, and our fire department is responsible for doing that under a state program, and therefore we're requesting an additional staff member that is essentially fee-based and supported. Just to give you a historical trending of full-time staffing for the city, going back to 08-09, we were at 1,613 full-time staff members. Today we're at 1,532. Again, we're roughly 5% or so below levels prior to the recession. Summary of rates for our enterprise funds. For refuse, staff is proposing a 3.5% increase to the single-family residence rate, going from $200 annually to $207 annually, and that's mainly due to operational cost increases that we're seeing, specifically with the private hauler contracts and wood waste-related costs that have increased over the last several years. So that is the main driver behind that request, and you'll have a public hearing coming before you in the meeting of the 6th. To go over that. Sewer rates, no proposed rate increase for residential this year. There is a 5-year plan that the council approved back in 2014 to adjust some characteristics on the commercial side of things. So about a fourth or so, I believe, of the commercial customers are impacted by this, and this has been a 5-year phase-in process. This is the last year of that, and it's dependent on water usage, so it can vary by customer. On the domestic water side, we're all familiar with the rate increases and subsequent rescission of some of those rate increases related to the TCP implementation and recovery of settlement dollars there. So there isn't any proposed rate increase at this point in time for domestic water, and we continue to analyze those TCP treatment costs to determine if there needs to be any further rate adjustments with the 16% adjustment that I believe was made last year. Our Fleet Services Division is scheduled to replace $12.2 million in vehicles and equipment in the upcoming year. That includes 40 vehicles in the police department, 3 fire vehicles. We are trying to get ahead and catch up actually on some of those refuse trucks that I talked about that are past their lifespan. So within the budget, we are requesting the replacement of 8 refuse trucks. Our Technology Services Division is also very busy in replacing all the computers, hardware, and software that city staff use, and there's a replacement schedule for that. So about $1.4 million is budgeted next year for normal replacement. Some highlights include about 75 mobile data computers for the police department. Those are actually in the vehicles that are deployed in the patrol cars, as well as 20 computers within the police department communications center as well. And there's some enhanced security work that's being done to various tech services infrastructure as well. Each year we like to mention that we are fully funding and meeting our obligation for the annual required contribution for the Retiree Healthcare Trust. So that's fully budgeted within this budget at $6.2 million. The city, as you know, is a leader amongst municipalities throughout California in funding status for that trust, and this continues that trend. The council contingency is budgeted at $25,000. Again, this is a reduced amount that's been reduced for several fiscal years due to the circumstances. We always like to highlight the fact that we're continuing to prioritize our spay and neuter program through animal control, offering low-cost spay and neuter vouchers. So we do have budgeted, once again, $1,040 vouchers. And finally, the Bakersfield Symphony and Bill Park bands, that's been a priority of council to continue to see funding for that agency. So again, built into the budget before you is the amount carried over from last year, essentially. Talk a little bit about the capital improvement program. I don't want to steal Nick Fiddler's thunder when he comes up and provides you with a more in-depth and longer overview in just a couple weeks, but I will highlight a few things for you. Next year, the capital improvement budget is proposed at $209.5 million. These are generally one-time revenues that are utilized for capital projects. It also includes grants that the city has been successful in receiving and programming those dollars. So year to year, it may fluctuate because of the timing of those grants, and this is one of those years where it's going to, as you'll see in a minute, look as though there is a significant increase in the capital side of things, and a lot of that's due to the fact that our staff has been very successful in leveraging state and federal resources for projects. So a little bit, this gives you a highlight of what you're going to see in the capital improvement budget. The Thomas Roads Improvement Program, obviously seeing the last few projects that are out there moving towards completion. The council has maintained a commitment to non-trip road funding and ensuring that the city streets outside of the TRIP program are maintained each and every year. And so this program, this capital improvement budget continues that. Bike and pedestrian enhancements are also included, mainly grant funded. We'll get into those in just a minute. Parks enhancement and expansion, again, we have dedicated restricted revenues that can be used for this type of improvement. And so we have several projects that are slated for next year as well. One of the things that you'll also see, maybe a few more projects this year than in the past, is over the last several years we've deferred several facility maintenance related projects, and it's coming to a point where we cannot defer those anymore. And so the CIP budget before you prioritizes several HVAC roofing type projects, which I'll provide some more detail here in just a minute. And again, as we do each and every year, we work closely with the enterprises, water, refuse, and wastewater to ensure ongoing maintenance and expansion as needed through their capital program. A little bit about the Thomas Roads Improvement Program. Remaining funding for several components of the Centennial Corridor is included in this budget, totaling for the TRIP program overall about $170.6 million. That's made up of a variety of different funding sources, including state grant funds that the city has recently received. Includes funding for the Bell Terrace State Route 99 overcrossing, the Centennial Corridor project itself, the next phases, and the Stockdale Highway Enos Lane roundabout, which is in tandem with the Centennial Corridor project. I have to note on the screen here that after our budget document was compiled, the city received another grant for $25 million, which was excellent, but what it did was immediately rendered some of our numbers obsolete in the sense of the print, so we have to adjust those, and you'll see some adjustments when we bring those back to you in June. A little bit more about on the capital side, SB 1, Senate Bill 1, the gas tax legislation We've received about $119 million in grants and other funding for the TRIP program through SB1. $6.3 million is coming directly to the city next year for street maintenance activity. And we have $2.1 million in funding through state programs for bicycle and pedestrian projects. As I mentioned, we have a variety of different sources of funding that are providing about $25 million that'll go to non-TRIP local road maintenance and expansion projects. Nick will get into those in his presentation, but again, continuing that commitment that the council has made a priority. Again, bicycle, pedestrian projects, all these are grant funded. There's a downtown connectivity project, which is actually going to install several hundred, I believe, access ramps where they're currently not access ramps, alleyways, corners, as well as install some additional sidewalk in certain areas. Bike share and bike lanes, this is another grant that we received through the state, so staff has been working with them on this project. It'll implement a bike share program, as well as install several miles of bike lanes. And then finally, from a planning perspective, our office is working in tandem with Public Works and other city departments on a bicycle and pedestrian safety plan. Recreation and parks, again, continuing to fund some of the larger regional sports complexes as well as local neighborhood park type projects. The Kaiser Permanente Sports Village will receive additional funding next year, as well as Torina Home Sports Complex at Mesa Marin. Both are continuing to expand, and we're seeing the use increase at both facilities. This is a picture of Mesa Marin and the work that's being done out there, which I believe we have an opening this week. So that's a picture of the work that was done out in Phase 2. As you recall, during the mid-year budget process, council allocated, I believe, about $500,000 for citywide tree replacement. This was to replace many of the trees that were lost during the drought with more drought-tolerant trees. So we have gone and started that process, and we're pretty much through that round. The budget contains, I believe, additional $250,000 to continue that process. McMurtry Aquatic Center, through our Community Development Block Grant Program, will receive some funding to improve and renovate some of the areas in the facility. It's increasing in usage, and several of the pieces of infrastructure are several years old now, and that needs work. There's also a project out in the south part of town in Ward 7 to close out some streetscapes areas where unfortunately, we had a developer that did not complete those, and this has been a high priority project for the residents in that area. And so this year we're able to propose to fund that project. Some public safety projects in the budget for next year: Fire Station 10 in the Northeast, as well as Fire Station 13. Both need some rehab. With Fire Station 10 here is pictured on the right. Part of that work will be to replace the roof, as well as some interior work that needs to be done. The station is 30 years old or so, and that needs to be completed. Similar roof work on Fire Station 13, just next door, the police headquarters. They're proposing a lobby renovation, which will make it, I guess, a little more user-friendly, guest-friendly in that area, as well as the K-9 modular office is getting to a point where it's no longer feasible to utilize that, and this project will replace it. And I believe that we're receiving a donation to partially offset the cost of that project. Finally, from a capital standpoint, miscellaneous-wise, the city is continuing its prioritization of ADA projects through funding for a continuation of planning and review of the transition plan, which is a required document of the city, so we'll continue to fund that. Visit Bakersfield is proposed to receive funding for a small sign that they have been requesting due to the fact that their existing sign no longer functions. Again, it's a deferred maintenance type item. And as I mentioned, facilities throughout the city, including City Hall North and City Hall South, need some deferred maintenance done with HVAC and roofing. So within the budget document, you'll see these projects outlined for this work. going to go over the numbers now that are kind of the foundation for the narrative I just shared with you. I start off by giving you the global view. And again, I asterisk the capital improvements just because it's a timing issue there with when the city receives some of this grant funding. So again, it looks like a pretty significant increase, but this is not a wild spending spree by staff or the like. It is simply a timing of the funding sources that the city receives. You'll see our operating budget, that's the salary and benefits, pens and pencils, is up just under 5%. And in total, we have a 30% increase. But again, that's mainly due to the timing of some of those capital projects and the funding sources. When we break down all the resources that the city has to budget, this is what it looks like by category. Taxes and assessments, and then charges for service, as well as intergovernmental, which includes a lot of the state grants, make up the lion's share, as well as fund balance carried forward of about $33 million, and then transfers in from different funds at about $35 million. Visually, this just shows you, again, the lion's share, where the lion's share of the revenues coming in and the resources coming into the city come from. Again, taxes and assessments and charges for service, both about a third. When we look at where those resources and revenues are going, again, the column on the right is going to give you what staff is proposing for next fiscal year. See an increase to public safety at about $135 million between the police and the fire department. Again, Public Works, that $326 million number is including, again, a lot of those additional capital dollars that I talked about. So that's where those are going, and that's why you see that difference there. Everybody else is relatively, all the other operations are relatively more or less flat year to year. Again, just a visual representation with the timing of those funds. Public Works is a lion's share this year overall. Again, and that's all funds. So we transition from all funds, which include restricted type funding sources, special funding sources, grants, to the general fund, which is of interest. It's the discretionary portion of the city's operating budget, made up primarily, as you'll see, of property tax and sales tax. A little bit about the revenue sources. What you're going to see here is 3 columns are actuals for 2016-17, revised estimates for the current year, and proposed budget, projected budget revenue for the revenues for next year. And again, we'll go through each of these in detail. Starting with property tax, again, the largest share of general fund revenue resides within the property tax. Secured property tax makes up the majority of the revenues within this category. Secured property tax is homes, property, and the taxes that are assessed under Prop 13. You can see a slight increase into next year that we're projecting as based upon information that we received from the Kern County tax collector. This is just simply showing you the last several years of actual secured property tax revenues in the green. The blue line is what we're projecting for the current year, and then the yellow line is, again, what we're projecting for next year, totaling to that $43.1 million. Sales tax, again, we've talked about some fluctuations that you'll see in just a minute, so we're looking at approximately about a 2% increase next year is what we're projecting, and again, that's based upon historical trending and where we believe we're at right now with this revenue source. Show you some trends and why we're talking about kind of that roller coaster effect over the last several years. You see from about 1995 to 04-05, there was a steady increase in sales tax each and every year that was rather consistent. Once we got to the boom and bust of 08 and then back up and back down, you can see it's been on this up and down, and it's been very difficult to project quarter by quarter what the trends will look like. And so again, this kind of gives you a longer term perspective of what, when we talk about that uncertainty, what we're dealing with on the sales tax side of things. This just looks at a snapshot of 12-13 through what we're projecting for 18-19. Again, a small increase is what's projected for next year. Regarding some other funding sources within the general fund, I'll go through these quickly. We're not projecting any significant increases in other taxes. Those are our utility franchise and business license tax mainly. Again, projecting a pretty flat year-over-year trend. Similarly, with our license and permits, development permits, alarm permits, essentially flat year to year, not seeing or projecting much of a bump. Intergovernmental revenue in the general fund, again, makes up about 1% of total revenues. And again, we're looking at, actually in this case, a slight decrease, mainly due to grants and the timing and what's expected for next year. Charges for service, there are various items within this category. All the maintenance district revenue for streetscapes and medians and parks fall in this category. Interdepartmental charges, development fees, all fall into this category. And again, just a slight increase is projected for next year. Fines, forfeits, and assessments, a very small percentage of overall revenue, and again, not any significant change. Finally, our miscellaneous revenues. This is pretty much everything else that I haven't covered, obviously. Again, just a slight decrease, but nothing significant to note here as well. So we talked about the sources of revenue for the general fund, the discretionary funding. This is a snapshot of where that money is proposed to be allocated for next fiscal year. Again, a less than a 4% increase overall. Again, on the lion's share of the funding in the general fund, about 63% goes towards police and fire service. And then again, the remainder is within the different departments. You'll notice a large percentage increase on the transfers. Simply what that is it's not a net increase to the general fund. It's how we're accounting for the LED project that we're doing with PG&E. It's essentially the on-bill financing component of that project. Rather than an electric bill, we're paying that over time, and then once that's paid off, I think in about 6 years, we'll see that net savings to the general fund. Again, visually, this is where general fund dollars are being proposed to be allocated. 44% to police, about 18% to fire, and the remaining departments have a smaller shares of general fund revenue. Another way to look at the general fund is essentially by category. Personnel, salary, and benefit costs make up about 81% of the general fund. Operating is close to 19%, and then there's some much smaller categories. But again, personnel is the lion's share of the general fund appropriations. So Mr. Tandy talked briefly about the optimal budget exercise that Councilmember Freeman requested we go through. And so through consultation with departments and through the finance department, we have gone through that exercise. There are some assumptions made in the numbers that I'm going to show you in just a minute. So I wanted to first go over those assumptions and then show you what we're looking at as far as that optimal budget versus the resources that we have today. So under a more optimal scenario, we would look at adding approximately 27 new positions, with over 60% being public safety, with a cost of about $2 million. We would actually increase some of the rental cost, internal rental fees that we have with our fleet to get them back to a more normal range, which would up the general fund budget by about $2.4 million. Within the general fund, there are several vehicles that that have exceeded their useful lifespan and would need to be replaced, but we are not able to get to them. And we anticipate we would need about $200,000 to start that. That would be a start. deferred capital outlays of about $500,000. Something that we've talked about previously would be potential to pre-fund a irrevocable trust to mitigate for future PERS increases. This would again be a start of about $2 million. And we've also talked about needing to increase cash reserves. There's industry standard targets of about 20%, which would equate to about $42 million today. It would take several years to get there, and we would propose to do that, I believe, over a 10-year period or so not a 10-year period, but starting with the $3 million. Capital reserve, a target would be $10 million. Again, we're under $4 million right now. We would request about $700,000 to beef that back up. That's the reserve that's used in case of emergencies or unexpected capital projects that are necessaries, like when the HVAC, I believe, went out in this building over the last year. We were able to utilize that, but that's been depleted over the last several years. And finally, something that hasn't been able to be budgeted over the last several years is a cost of living increase. For the purposes of this exercise, we included a 1.5% cost of living increase. So with all that being said, we again are comparing what our projected FY19 resources are at $209.2 million compared to the total amount of those items that I just outlined on top of our normal operating budget and on top of our normal staffing complement. That totals $224.2 million. So there's roughly a $15 million gap through this exercise that we could not achieve given the current level of revenues today. I just have a few more slides for you, and then I'll wrap up and we'll be available for questions. The summary, really, what we're showing here with this budget is it does not allow for the enhancement of services to address several community-identified issues that we have heard about and that we know about. That includes improving police response times to several categories of calls that are not considered priority ones, robberies, residential burglaries, thefts, several quality of life type calls. No ability to provide additional staffing for higher visibility police patrols. No ability to provide resources to prevent and deter gang and youth violence above and beyond what we have today. No ability to, as you talked about earlier today, to address increasing resources that would be available to address the increase in homelessness. No ability to establish an economic development team, as we've talked about previously, to work hand in hand with local stakeholders to diversify and expand the local economy. And finally, no opportunity to provide additional funding sources for additional grant dollars, which we believe are out there and available, but we need local matches for those types of funding, and we don't have that ability today. We mentioned it earlier, just to review the timeline and what we're going to be going through over the next several weeks. I'm here tonight kicking off the budget process. On the 14th, we have a noon workshop where several departments are going to present the detailed budgets. June 4th, similarly, the remainder of the departments will be before you. We'll have a public hearing on June 6th, as we do each and every year. And then finally, on the 20th, we'll be coming before you with the proposed budget in its final form for consideration. I do want to mention each and every year that our budget information is readily available on the city's website. How do I learn about city budget? It's a simple menu click that you can reach from the homepage. We have current and archived budget information there for anyone that wants to go on and take a look at it. So our budget book that you all have a copy of this evening will be online first thing in the morning, as well as this presentation. And I also want to remind everyone that we do have our open budget platform, and as this budget is approved, and when it is approved at some point in the future, those numbers will be loaded into open budget, and over the course of the next fiscal year, you can track actual revenues and expenditures as they happen on a monthly basis. And you can do that right now for the current year, and you can go back and take a look at 5-year history as well. I want to quickly thank our budget team. This is a 4 or so month effort, and really it's a year-long process, but it really intensifies over the last several months. We have a great budget team that work hand in hand with departments in evaluating requests. We have department heads, business managers, and budget managers throughout the organization that, again, partner with our office and work in tandem to identify ways to meet in each and every city council goal that's put before us. And city staff overall, each and every city staff member has a role in the budget, whether they know it or not, and we appreciate the work that staff does each and every day for the community and for our residents. With that, I'm done, and I will turn it over for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Huot. Let's take a little break, a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and continue. Thank you. All right, reconvening. Thank you, Mr. Huot. And now, council members, if you have comments or questions. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Huot, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. I'm sorry, give me just a moment. I wanted to ask a question regarding the optimal budget. Find it real quick. If you have the page, you can get me back. Page 20. So here you depict the optimal budget gap from the projected fiscal year 19 resources at $15 million. Can you describe for us what you mean by optimal budget? Is that all in best city services, or is that providing services that meet reasonable growth expectations? Describe for me and for the public what you mean by optimal.
Sure. Councilmember Gonzalez, it could have been approached in one of several ways. The approach we took was a practical one. If we had more money, more revenues, the HR department, in addition to annual turnover, can only hire and process so many hires. The Public Works Department Design Engineering Group can only process the design of so many capital outlays. So we took what, with a better revenue situation, a good, solid uplift in the budget would be, that would be practical to implement during a year. It does not represent another definition of, where would you love to be in an idealized world, absent practical considerations, which would be a higher number. But that's pretty much the approach we took. If circumstances were better, that could be done. Enhancement to reserves could be done, potentially set aside for future cost escalation could be done. But this would be more of the practical capability. We've estimated, for example, that in the police department with enhanced revenues that it would take 3 years to ramp up.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council members? I guess you answered all our questions, Mr. Huot. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work, staff. We do now have a late
Just a
buzz-in.
quick comment. Chris, you do a beautiful presentation that's very difficult, involves a lot of work, obviously, but the way you present it is flawless, so thank you.
Councilmember Sullivan, thank you. And again, I'd just like to say that there are a lot of staff, great staff members behind me that do a lot of work, so thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent calendar items 8A through 8AO for approval. Staff memorandums have been received requesting items 8K and 8N be removed from the agenda.
Councilmember Weir.
Thank you, Mayor. Does any council member wish to remove or pull an item for separate consideration? Any council member have a conflict? Seeing none, I would move that we approve items 8A through 8A0, except for item 8K and 8N.
You have a motion. Please cast your vote.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. And now for item 8K. We have staff who would like to comment on this.
Actually, Mayor, I think that both of those items have been pulled, so we'll bring them to the council at the next meeting. So we can just move on, I think, to the hearings.
Thank you very much. Our next item is a public hearing. Before I open the public hearing, I'll go over the presentation time policy. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers, so it's important that you identify yourself and make your statement quickly so others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to staff's recommendation, then we'll hear from those who would like to speak in favor of the recommendation. There's a testimony, if there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the wall behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and after 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will flash indicating your time is up, and we ask that you quickly end your statement. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be answered until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statements, please give those to the clerk and she'll provide copies to the council. We ask you to be courteous to others who wish to speak. Unless there's an approval by the majority of the City Council, there's a strict 15-minute time limit for all those in favor or opposition to staff's recommendation. So please be concise, avoid repeating yourself and the previous speaker's remarks. Madam Clerk, would you please read the first public hearing item?
Item A, making downtown Bakersfield high-speed rail station area vision plan located in the general area of F Street and Golden State Avenue at the northern edge of downtown Bakersfield and the surrounding area of downtown Bakersfield. One email was received in support of the high-speed rail station area vision plan, and 4 emails received in opposition to the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Kitchen.
Good evening, Mayor Go and Honorable Council. I am here tonight, and I wanted to first mention that I'm joined by several of the team that's here. First, we have Cecilia Grego here, who's the staff planner that was the project manager for this project. I'm also joined by Eric Vonberg, who is the environmental consultant that we used, and Amitabh Barthakur, who's the economic advisor on this important project. As you know, this is a vision plan for the downtown Bakersfield area, and this is something that we have been working on for 2.5 years. And tonight represents the final hearing for this lengthy and detailed project. We've met several times, and I've given you updates before. So we'll go through and refresh on a few of those things, and then we'll get into the details of the plan. This is an overview of the items that we'll discuss tonight. So first, we'll recap a little bit about high-speed rail in general and in Bakersfield. As we know, high-speed rail was first approved by California voters in 2008 with Proposition 1A. In regards to Bakersfield specifically, the State High-Speed Rail Authority certified a Fresno to Bakersfield EIR, which identified a specific alignment from Fresno to the Bakersfield area. And that's shown here on as the blue line on this map. However, the city and other entities within the Bakersfield area filed suit against the high-speed rail regarding this alignment due to its potential impacts to residents, businesses, and other facilities within the city. The city was able to reach a settlement agreement with the high-speed rail in 2014. At that time, the high-speed rail agreed to study an alternative alignment, which is shown as the green line on this map. That alignment, as you can see, avoids a majority of the residents, businesses, and other facilities within the city. As part of this effort, the high-speed rail offered a grant to the city to do some planning activities for the station area in the downtown Bakersfield area. And the purpose of this grant was to create a plan for what Bakersfield would do if and when high-speed rail came to Bakersfield. When the city was deciding whether or not to accept this grant, we made a clear decision that there would be independent utility in this project if we moved forward with it. In accepting this grant, we wanted to create a plan that was broader in scope than just looking at high-speed rail. We wanted to look at downtown revitalization overall. And this was a great opportunity to do that. And it was consistent with the goals and policies of high-speed rail, because in order for them to locate downtown, they want to see a strong downtown. So moving forward, for the last 2.5 years, we launched that effort to do this vision plan, and that is what we will be talking about tonight. So the first thing that we looked at when we started this effort was the potential of our downtown. As many of us know, and as we've talked about recently, even tonight in other hearing items, our city is over 150,000 square miles. We have over 386,000 residents, and that's a 40% increase from 2000 to 2010. We've also enjoyed a steady annual population growth rate of about 1.3% since 2010, and we have one of the most affordable housing markets among California's largest city, and we're the 38th most affordable in the nation. Here locally, Bakersfield has already planned for additional housing in order to support this growth in the future. And you can see that here in the blue shaded areas on this map. And those are areas within the city that have residential developments pre-approved. In the middle of all this is downtown Bakersfield, and we are uniquely structured with our downtown being in the heart of our city. It truly connects all 4 quadrants of our city, including both the north, south, east, and west. And downtown really does represent a great place for community to gather. Downtown already has a number of existing amenities, including a number of historic buildings, cultural venues. It's home to our central business district, including my department's building right here. And it is the government center for our community, with both county, city, and other local government services located downtown. There are a variety of new amenities that we've talked about in past hearings and again tonight, including Mill Creek Park, the federal library, or the federal courthouse, and a number of other new things in the downtown area. And this has all led to an increase in programming and community events in downtown. Everything ranging from First Friday to Third Thursday to Second Saturday, and everything in between is happening downtown. It really is becoming the place for the community to all come and gather together. There are a lot of opportunities left in downtown as well. We have quite a few buildings throughout the downtown area that have empty or vacant upper floor space that has great potential to be revitalized and reused for residential uses, office uses, and more. There are infill opportunities with the parking areas and other underdeveloped parcels throughout downtown. There are connection opportunities with our alleyways, with our connected street grid, and more. And we've already been seeing a new renaissance. There was an article in the paper about it this morning about the resurgence of quick-serve restaurants, and that has been throughout the city, but especially downtown. We've seen a number of new developments, businesses that have chose to locate themselves in our downtown area and build on the existing synergy and growth that's there. So what all of this does is it lays the groundwork for additional enhanced future development in downtown. And when we were going through this process, we looked at the high-speed rail's selection, or to study the locally generated alternative alignment and what that would look like for our downtown. And we see that that would place a station at F Street and Golden State, as you can see here, and that that location actually has great connectivity to the rest of the city. It has a direct connection to Golden State Highway and Highway 99, to State Route 178, and then direct connections into the rest of the downtown area through F Street, H Street, Chester Avenue, and more. So the next step in the process was to outline milestones for this vision plan. And I won't go into detail on all of these as we've discussed them before, but essentially this was the process that we've been going through over the last few years, and it started with public workshops, and it's ending today with final presentation of the vision plan. So to talk a little more about the public outreach, we did hold 11 vision workshops in March and April of 2016, and over 150 Bakersfield residents came out and participated in that. And the purpose there was to gain an understanding of what the community thinks that downtown should look like in the future. The values that we heard loud and clear were that the community wants to see connectivity both within our downtown and in connecting downtown to the rest of Bakersfield. Our community residents also expressed that they wanted to see vibrancy in downtown. They wanted it to be an inspiring place to be, and they wanted to see compact urban development, much like you would see in many large cities throughout the country. We also had a community workshop in August of 2016 with over 125 people in attendance at that single workshop, and that was held at the Convention Center. And then in March of 2017, we held a public open house where the first stage of the vision plan was revealed, and that was a staged implementation strategy that looked at specific ways for downtown to develop over the next 10, 20, and 30 years. And I'll talk about that a little more in just a moment. The next component of this vision plan was the existing conditions analysis. And this was important because this was an opportunity for us to really dive deep and look into the infrastructure of our downtown area and have an understanding of what's there and what could be improved. Part of that analysis showed that there were quite a few underutilized parcels throughout the downtown area. We saw some pictures of those earlier, and those are shown here. Predominantly surface parking lots and vacant parking lots downtown that are known in the development world as soft sites. These are sites that are ready to go for more dense, more modern, more urban type development. The reports also showed that there are a number of alleyways, and those are shown in red here. We have quite a few alleys that provide unique opportunities for redevelopment, and there is one continuously connected alley that runs all the way through downtown, and no portions of that have been removed from the alley system. And so that provides a unique opportunity that we'll also discuss a little more. We also found that there is quite a bit of open space already programmed and developed through our Recreation and Parks Department in the downtown area. Everything from the bike trail to the Mill Creek Linear Park to the Central Park downtown and more. But this analysis did show that currently those aren't connected together with a multimodal or pedestrian type path. However, if the high-speed rail were to come along the locally generated alternative, that rail line would provide another opportunity for connection and possible creation of a multimodal walking path, biking path, et cetera, that follows that alignment. So some of the lessons that were learned from this existing conditions report is that investments in vision can make our downtown competitive with the other suburban areas throughout the city. We have quite a few great, highly amenitized commercial areas throughout the city, but we know that by investing downtown, that will make it more competitive for future jobs, diversity in our employment base in the downtown area, and that also the inclusion of additional housing and retail will prepare downtown for this future investment. With this investment, the hotels would come downtown. There would be additional retail opportunities and additional housing and future office development, all centered within the heart of the city. And the best way to connect these things is to utilize our well-connected grid of streets and utilize this for both pedestrian connection and create better walkability and bikeability for downtown. So the next thing, the next component of this process was to take that information that we had received from that public outreach and from the existing conditions analysis and create the actual vision plan itself. And so there is a video that highlights how that process went. So I'd like to show that to you today. And there is sound here. I'm not sure how there it goes.
We have to be united in thinking about what is best for our community and what can bring us into the future. So downtown Bakersfield is the coming together of the old and the new. We honor our heritage and we welcome the new, embracing what is joyful, what is meaningful, and what is the future of our community.
In 2000,
2016, the City of Bakersfield began a partnership with the California High-Speed Rail Authority, and with funding and resources from both the High-Speed Rail Authority and Kern Council of Governments, developed a high-speed rail station area plan for downtown Bakersfield. The Making Downtown Bakersfield process leveraged the grassroots revitalization efforts of local stakeholders already underway into an implementation strategy that seeks to connect the future high-speed rail station into the community's historic core. Over the course of the planning process, what came to light for all was that making downtown Bakersfield more connected, livable, and prosperous will also make the city and region high-speed rail ready. The planning process began with a series of 11 vision workshops that engaged a diversity of community stakeholders in a conversation about the heart of the city. These workshops identified the community values that would frame a strategy for the rebirth of downtown. These vision workshops were the beginning of an extensive outreach campaign that included the creation of a stakeholder committee to oversee the planning process, one-on-one meetings and presentations to elected officials, nonprofits, and community leaders, an online engagement portal, and 2 large community open houses. The mobilization of the community brought the many downtown stakeholders together to share their efforts, and in doing so, unite them into a more impactful transformation of downtown.
I'm excited about downtown, where our streets are transformed from just being a place for cars. Our streets can become places where we're connected through walking, bicycles, and other modes of transportation that we haven't even imagined.
To thrive, we need to leverage high-speed rail to create ladders of economic opportunity. You know, there are synergistic effects when we take high-speed rail and place it in urban centers.
More job opportunity, more business industry, which high-speed rail will bring, with that station will bring that. That way our people can get jobs and stay here and don't have to leave here, graduate, go somewhere else and find a job. And we need a more nightlife city here.
I think more events, maybe. Because I noticed downtown, in Bakersfield, we don't commonly have them, especially down here.
We need more than one venue. We are growing here, so we need more diversity of entertainment.
I think really unique open office space opportunities.
More participation among the overall community of the greater Bakersfield area.
I was born downtown. I care about it. It's got great assets, but it needs to be walkable.
We just need to generate some life downtown. There's just so many things that somebody can come downtown and experience that what we really just need are more people, more life.
From this extensive public input, an analysis of downtown's physical assets, and projections of future growth, the city created a 30-year phased development strategy for downtown Bakersfield. This strategy focuses on reinvestment along the Chester Avenue corridor, creates a strong connection between the Mill Creek Linear Park and the historic core, and enhances the public realm to make for a more walkable downtown. Creating a ring of open space around downtown will both attract future development and support it with an enhanced quality of life. The vision for downtown Bakersfield is to make Chester Avenue the front door for the new high-speed rail station. Anchoring the station along Bakersfield's primary and historic commercial corridor will better integrate the development anticipated around the new high-speed rail station into the existing urban fabric, promoting the development of vacant parcels and surface parking lots while supporting the rehabilitation of existing buildings. This new mixed-use district will redefine the role of historic Garces Circle, making it again the gateway to the community.
I love our community. It's warm, it's friendly, it's inviting. And now in the future, I'm looking forward to this opportunity where we can have community all within a vibrant, growing downtown.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was a great video that summarizes the process. And then all of that, of course, led to creating an actual deliverable. So we have right here the vision plan itself, and this is what's before you tonight to approve. And I'll kind of talk through a couple of the highlights of this. It's not just a book, though. It's also going to be online. It's going to be interactive. It's going to be modern. So the vision plan itself contains a couple of key concepts. The first was to create that ring of open space in downtown and to build on the connection between the bike trail along the Kern River, the existing Mill Creek area, the potential of a pedestrian walkable paseo along Wall Street or somewhere in that area potentially, and really create something that's an amenity and that's unique to downtown. The next concept, that's what the connections would look like there, would be to create a public space and to create an open space where there would be a dedicated area for the community to gather. This potentially could address the issue with the closure of streets if there were a dedicated space. So there's a lot of opportunity here. And the next vision concept is to truly develop a plan to enhance our transit and bike facilities downtown. So the plan itself has really detailed mapping that shows where those bike upgrades could be located, where transit upgrades could be located, and it really digs deep to look at how we can implement this vision. So the next component of the vision plan was that three-phased development strategy. The first phase focuses on now and through the next 10 years, and it prioritizes infill development, strengthening our core downtown, encouraging historic rehabilitation of those historic buildings, and overall revitalization of downtown to encourage economic growth, all while making our downtown ready for high-speed rail. And this is the mapping that shows the details of that. As you can see, it focuses on redevelopment within the urban core for the first 10 years. And then phase 2 is 2025 through 2035. And that focuses on continuing that infill development up along Chester Avenue to create a strong connection between the downtown core and the northern part of downtown. And you can see that the phase 2 builds upon the development within phase 1 and increases that and moves that northward. It encourages revitalization and housing near the Garces Circle area. This would also encourage the hospital to continue to grow. There's already been a major renovation and full development of a campus there. And obviously that's something that this plan wants to build upon and encourage to continue. The final phase is pretty far out. It's a little more conceptual because we don't really know exactly how we'll look as a community or as a downtown in 2035. But this focuses on building out the district around the station itself. And it again builds on the first two phases and encourages development of recreational activities, mixed use, commercial office, sort of a live, work, play concept around that station itself. The last component of the plan is very specific list of implementation strategies. These are the top 10 strategies that are included, but there are many more within the plan itself. And these are specific directives, suggestions, ideas on how we actually make these things a reality over the next 10, 20, and 30 years. As you can see here, your council has already had the wisdom to implement several of these already. There's an effort to create a property business improvement district sometime in the next 1 to 2 years for downtown. Your council has already set a goal of reaching 10,000 residents by 2030 and 25,000 residents in downtown by 2035. So we're already on track to get this plan in place and to realize the vision. So the next step is I have Eric here to discuss the environmental review that went into this project, because as we well know, you need to do a comprehensive environmental review of anything and everything in California, and we have done that. And the purpose of that is that the environmental review will be completed and it will help streamline future development and projects that actually implement this plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Eric Vonberg with Rincon Consultants. What I'm presenting today is the CEQA process and the environmental impact report that we prepared for this project. And just as a quick background, the purpose of an EIR is to me mainly, it's a information item for making public agency decisions, giving you guys the information to make a good decision on this project. And then the purpose of a final EIR is to take those comments we received when we go out for public review of the document and respond to those comments, so that then you have that information as well in your decision-making process. And above all else, CEQA is a process, and we followed that process as required by the regulations. And this shows you here the outline of the project, from sending out a notice of preparation explaining that we are preparing a document, all through the submitting a draft document for public review, and then having the final EIR for you guys to make a decision on today. What this EIR identified is, when you look on the left, is the impacts that were identified that were potentially significant, but we could be mitigated to a less than significant level. And then on the right side, the two issue areas of noise and transportation that were identified issues that were determined to be significant and unavoidable impacts. So those are what you would have to do a statement of overriding consideration in order to approve this project. When we sent out this document for review, we received back 29 written comments on this project, and you see here 8 letters from public agencies, and all of these comments were addressed in the final EIR. What we focused on was there were some global issues that came up in all of these letters and the comments received on it. And so we prepared global responses to these comments that are listed there on the right, and I'll go through some of those for you right now. The first one was whether it's a project EIR versus a program EIR. A project EIR is when you have a specific project, such as a building, and it's a clearly identified project. There's 20 stories, this much square footage, it's going to generate this much traffic, it's going to require this much water, et cetera. And you can really get into the details on what are those impacts and mitigations for those. On a program EIR is more for something like this, a vision plan, where it's a long-term project. There's, kind of known issues, but not specific issues as to, where the car is going to come, where's the water going to flow, those kind of things, so that you do an overall project looking at those potential impacts, with the idea that then later projects falling underneath the umbrella of this project can tear off of that environmental document and get into the more details as those become known, as those other projects come along. The next one was, we did that one. So here we go, of the project boundary. When they developed this project, started with the Central District area as sort of the starting point for identifying what was going to be the project area to be identified. And as you can see, then moved into looking at the location of the potential station and in what those areas would need to be involved with this project. And that's where we came up with these boundaries here. And as well, this project is to generate development within the downtown and also serve the whole community as a whole. Another global response was then an F Street station versus the Truxton station. And as you can show, the hybrid alignment with the station at Truxton, shown in purple down at the bottom, was the original design, and then came forward with the locally generated alternative with that station there. This project was looking at, recognized both of those stations in development of this project, but it's not determining which station or which alignment is doing it. It's the purpose of this project is to look at the development of downtown. Oops. Missed one. And then this is similar with global response number 4 of looking at whether the project was looking at both stations or not, which it did identify as this is for the development of downtown, not looking specifically at station locations. And then the next response was whether it's a vision plan versus a specific plan, and basically if you get into a specific plan, it actually identifies land use that can occur in a certain area and what can be developed there, whereas the vision plan is looking at sort of more globally, looking at here's the development that's going to occur over those we looked at it in those 3 different phases and what could potentially occur from there. And it doesn't actually identify, like a parcel of what's going to be prepared or built on a specific piece of land. And then as well, dealing with the San Joaquin Hospital, there was concern that it was going to be redeveloped or rezoned, and that's not the case at all. And then we had so this is all put together into the final EIR, which is before you now today, and most of those questions and the responses that we did, were shown there in those global responses there, and that's all before you today and for the final EIR for your decision. And that's where we are today.
Great, thank you, Eric. Okay, so the last couple slides are the good stuff. We're looking at what are we doing here today. We have several final deliverables that are here before us today. The first is this final vision plan. It includes the top 10 implementation strategies and more detailed strategies as well. And then it's also including the final environmental impact report that Eric just highlighted for you. And it also includes the final webpage and GeoHub. As I mentioned earlier, this plan will not just live in a book on a shelf. It will be online, it will be interactive, it will be available for the community, for developers, for the public to use and navigate as we go forward. So the other question before us is, what is the purpose of this plan? What are we going to do with it? Well, the purpose is that by adopting this vision plan, this shows the city's support of the big picture for downtown revitalization. This plan establishes a blueprint for the future of our downtown and for revitalization of that area. And it also provides clear guidance for future businesses, investors, property owners, and the community when they make selections on where to invest in the downtown. And then with the EIR, it also allows for a streamlined permitting process in the future as we move forward in actually building the buildings and making the improvements that are envisioned in this plan. So the final action now is for your council to consider approving the plan. This was considered by the Planning Commission on April 19th, and we heard public comments. We've had robust discussion about the plan, and the Planning Commission made a unanimous recommendation for your council to adopt this vision plan tonight and to certify the EIR. And then that is our recommendation to you this evening. And if your council decides to move forward with that motion, the next steps will be for us to finalize the website and get everything out to the public and move forward in the implementation process for the next 10, 20, and 30 years. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and myself and the technical experts are here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very clear and comprehensive presentation. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. How many people would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Would you just raise your hand? 1, 2, 3. Would you come to the front? Please come to the microphone. Just come up to the front so we can move through quickly. And then we would just ask you to come to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Okay, I'm doing this on the fly. My name is Jim Robinson, Ward 6, Councilwoman. After looking at what I saw this evening, it seems to me that you created a very, very good image of symbiotic relationship between high-speed rail and what's happening downtown. My thought, though, is that the downtown that I'm accustomed to does not include that northern part where F Street and Golden State Highway meet, that you would go ahead and put the proposed station. My question is, if you put that station there, who's going to come to the downtown area where we have all of our major attractions? How are they going to get there? What are they going to see along the way as this particular plan develops? I mean, a number of questions. Things were addressed here this evening with regards to the homeless issue downtown, specifically along that area, some of that area around where the council proposes, or whether the staff proposes to put the station. And in looking at the track record of Bakersfield right now, with a couple of pretty significant unfinished projects, the Centennial Corridor, well, just to name one, I'm really wondering if this is something you could, I'm really wondering if phase one is something that can actually be accomplished in 10 years. We still have a couple of unfinished projects on the books right now. And I want very much to see this. I would love to see those areas cleaned up. But right now, as far as bringing people into Bakersfield to take advantage of the amenities, it doesn't seem to me that F Street and Golden State Highway are the best choice for the point of entry for those people. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Thank you. Please come forward and identify yourself.
My name is Tony Amaranti. I'm a resident. I thank you for this opportunity to speak to all of you. You know, it's great to think that we're going to revitalize downtown Bakersfield, but it just doesn't seem practical to not have the high-speed rail station where the Amtrak station already is on Truxtun Avenue. I was here on the 19th of April for the presentation, and I thought I heard somebody say, well, the city has a problem with putting high-speed rail on Truxtun because then you're going to interfere with the operation of the corporation yard over on West Truxtun there. So why don't you guys put the city yard over there on F Street and put the high-speed rail station downtown where the Amtrak station is, and then, you know, you'd get more people into downtown and it would be vibrant because there'd be a lot of people there. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Welcome. Please identify yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. My name is Troy Hightower. I'm a local independent transportation consultant, and I have a number of concerns with the station area plan as it is today. I don't want to go all of them and get too technical, but the station study areas and the areas that were depicted for the environmental impact report do not typically depict transportation-related studies. They're normally done a radius around a proposed station. In one of the earlier slides, there were dashed circles around both the proposed F Street station and the downtown Truxtun. But you may have noticed the study area did not include all of those circle areas. That's one. The other is the station area plan really focused on the F Street location and the possibilities in that area. And in their phasing, the 0 to 10-year plan, I think is a very good plan. However, after that, I think there's some inconsistencies with planning in general, where the 10-year plan would go from, say, 2018 to 2028. Well, the second phase starts at 2025 and jumps over to F Street. So I'm not sure if that's practical. But I think what may be more practical is the 0 to 10 plan for the development of downtown, and then an option that looks at growth and development in the future 2025 timeframe at F Street as well as downtown. That would help more people get a better idea of the possibilities for downtown as it relates to the station area plan. In the agreement with high-speed rail, there was a deliverable to be done that was called the multimodal connection plan. And I have not seen that. I don't know if it was done. I've been to most of the meetings and I've tried to follow this, but I do not recall that was presented. The reason I bring that up is because multimodal connectivity is very important to the success of such a station, and as well it's part of what the guidelines that both the state has put out for station area as well as the feds. I do have some comments about the EIR, but since they're both related, but I believe there'll be another agenda item for that. But a lot of the comments that, as I read them in Chapter 9, asked that same question, what about downtown Truxtun, or what growth was there? as well as there was a number of agencies that submitted, some of them lengthy comments on some improvements, corrections, or things that they think should have been done or included in the station area plan. And so with that, for example, a traffic circulation study. A lot of people have made that comment and request to have one. There wasn't one done, however, after the public comment period closed in February. That circulation study was done in March, and I believe based on response to comments. However, the stakeholders and public have not had a chance to review that plan and or make comments on that. So with that, what I would recommend is that the council delay approving the plan and request that staff look at incorporating a lot of the comments that were made that they did address in the EIR, as well as including the traffic circulation study. And the reason I say and believe it would be better to delay it is that this is a huge project. And in my opinion, the biggest benefit is the economic opportunities this project has for us. And that's not really addressed in the stationary plan. There's only a 1 or 2 paragraph on economic development from the high-speed rail, which is a major transportation system, at the very end. And I think that it would be more appropriate that economic opportunities of having a high-speed rail station, which only a handful of cities in the state will have, should be more prominent in the station area plan. And with that, as I mentioned, I think I would encourage the council to consider, this is a very important thing. This is going to affect us for decades, and it's a great economic opportunity for us. And we've got the time. The state is not planning to complete the environmental process for the alignment until October of this year. So we could benefit by what that report shows to improve the current stationary plan. And that is my goal, to improve it. I don't really oppose the plan. And I like what the staff has done. They've done great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hightower. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? If so, please come forward at this time. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm Dennis Fox. About 2 hours and 20 minutes ago, I was crossing the San Joaquin River. I look over and here is this bridge going up. It goes for about a half a mile and it stops. Go 2 more miles, there's 4 dirt piles. At 13 2/10 miles, there's the high-speed rail again. Kind of a little gap going through the middle of town. So I'm not against this. In fact, what I would suggest, don't count your high-speed rails until they're hatched, seriously. And I would suggest, for a vision, think about what you're going to have there without a high-speed rail. You know, we've had enough trouble in this town with Clarion hotels and empty stuff and stuff, that if it doesn't show up, you still have something that's pretty good. Look, I think it'll work. You can do that. Just contingency planning. And I like to always look at what's not there. It works for me, and Elvis likes it. So I was thinking just always have something to fall back on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Seeing none, how many people would like to speak in support of staff's recommendation? Would you just raise your hands, please? Okay, come on forward, please, and identify yourself. Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Diana Gomez. I am the Central Valley Regional Director for the California High-Speed Rail Authority. We'd like to thank Mayor Go and the City Council members, the Planning Commission, and especially the city staff for all their leadership and support and all of their hard work in putting together this plan. The authority and the city, especially the city, the local stakeholders have been working together to create this new vision plan to revitalize downtown Bakersfield. We are in support of this plan as it fulfills the general principles for high-speed rail station area development. In closing, the authority looks forward to continue working with the city and its stakeholders to create a new downtown Bakersfield. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, is there anyone who would like to rebut in opposition? And seeing none, is there anyone who would like to rebut in support? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing now and return it to council for comment and action. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. I want to begin by thanking staff for all the hard work put into this plan, and I would like to thank the community for all their support and feedback throughout the process. One of the things I was most impressed with is the foresight that staff had when first embarking on this study to ensure that it had independent utility of whether or not the high-speed rail actually happens. And so I want to commend staff for that. And to that point, I just want to underscore a couple of things. I heard some of the comments tonight in opposition and have read some of the comments in the EIR. And I wanted to clarify, just for the benefit of the public, that in fact the high-speed rail station location is another question outside of this vision plan, correct?
Councilmember Gonzalez, that is correct. The location of the station is not something that the city will decide. The city does have an opinion. However, ultimately that decision will be made by the state of California and the High-Speed Rail Authority. And again, to build upon your comments, this plan envisions a revitalization of downtown with or without high-speed rail, and it acknowledges both the F Street station location and the existing Amtrak site, and it also includes a detailed infrastructure improvement plan and suggestions in order to connect those two sites. And again, the purpose and foundation of this study is based around economic development. There was a comprehensive economic development study done as a part of this plan that made specific findings about what the projections could be for growth in downtown over the next 10, 20, and 30 years. And the vision was crafted to contemplate that and take that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you very much. I did have another question. There was a comment regarding the traffic circulation plan. Can you update the council on?
Certainly. So the original EIR that went out did include a traffic analysis. And then as is part of the EIR process, that EIR was circulated for public review. We received numerous comments, and as CEQA requires, we responded to each one of those comments in a response to comments. And the purpose of that response to comments is to take into account the public's concerns, the agency's concerns, questions, suggestions for revisions, and to actually make those revisions. And there was an update done to the traffic study as a part of that process, and that update was included in the response to comments that has been out for public review since April of this year.
Great, thank you. With that, I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the resolutions.
We have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Also, under hearings, we have a public hearing on resolution of necessity to determine the public interest and necessity for acquisition of certain real property by eminent domain for the Centennial Corridor project. 2 partial fee interests consisting of 10,664 square feet and a 287 square foot, 48-month temporary construction easement in portions of real property located southeast of Commerce Drive.
Mr. Fidler.
Honorable Mayor and council members, as you're aware, the Centennial Corridor is being built in multiple phases as funding is acquired, design is complete, and right-of-way is acquired as well. As you know, the Centennial Corridor Phase 1, the Kern River Bridges, is currently in construction, and Phase 2, the Bell Terrace Bridge, is anticipated to go out to bid in the next couple weeks. That is thank you to state grants that were recently received for that project. In addition, Phase 3, the freeway connector loop, Bakersfield Freeway Connector, is hopefully will be awarded an additional $25 million next week at the CTC meeting. This property that we're going to be discussing tonight falls within Phase 4 of the Centennial Corridor project, which is part of the mainline project. Tonight, you're being asked to consider the adoption of resolution of necessity to acquire 2 partial fee interests consisting of a total of 10,864 square feet and a 287 square foot temporary construction easement in portions of a property located in the southeast of Commerce Drive, more specifically located just southeast of the Westside Parkway to Truxton Avenue loop ramp within the Centennial Corridor alignment. The power of eminent domain is used by the city only as a last resort to obtain interest necessary for the project. An offer of just compensation has been offered to the owner and the tenants for full fair market value of the property, including improvements pertaining to the realty as determined by various appraisals. City staff has attempted to negotiate an amicable settlement in good faith and will continue to do so throughout the process. Staff recommends adoption of the proposed resolution of necessity.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. How many people would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Would you please come forward? Please identify yourself.
Sure. My name is Stacy Thompson. I'm an attorney with Peterson Law Group. We represent the property owners and the tenants on the property. EMB Natural Resources is one of the tenants, and Gary Richardson is here on behalf of EMB today. My clients have been in diligent negotiations with the city, trying to come to an amicable resolution with respect to this issue. We think we're very close. Actually, just before this council meeting began, I got an email from council with some new negotiation points which we need to discuss and are hoping to address tomorrow with council. And so at this point, we're asking that the city postpone adopting this resolution for 2 to 4 weeks so that we can nail down those points and get documentation established so that there is no need to adopt the resolution of necessity or initiate any of the eminent domain litigation that follows. We want to work with the city. We've been working with the city. We think we're almost there. 2 to 4 weeks should do it. And so we ask at this point that you please postpone adopting the resolution so we can get this deal done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Seeing none, is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. Councilmember Freeman.
Miracle, thank you. Won't the negotiations continue even if we adopt this resolution tonight with both parties trying to reach an amicable agreement? And if not, eventually it goes to court. But if the project is going to move forward, I don't see any benefit in not adopting the resolution, because we're still, our staff is charged with trying to reach a fair agreement anyway. So I'm just assuming that'll, if the parties can reach agreement, they're going to reach an agreement.
Councilmember Freeman, that is always our goal, and we generally agree with the comments that we're close and we're both working hard. We're down to the last 3 or 4 properties out of 225. And the sequential series of events that is necessary to go to bid starts with the property certification indicating we own or have control of all the properties. So yes, while it is true that we're close, it is true that we will continue to negotiate in good faith and are optimistic about successful resolve. We also need to cover ourselves for contingent circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Tandy. With that, I would move that we adopt the city's position resolution.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Council and mayor statements.
Colleagues, is anybody? Councilmember Parlier.
Thank you, Mayor. This Saturday, between 8 and 11 o'clock at Riverwalk Park, the Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association is going to have a 5K walk. And I ask everyone to come out and enjoy it with me. I'm sure it's going to be a great event. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be there. Anyone else? Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor Go. I just wanted to give a couple of shout outs to city staff. One, to the police chief and to the police department. I had an individual call me with particular requests, and we discovered that she in fact lived within the county, but the chief had the watch commander follow up nonetheless and put her in touch with the appropriate parties in the county, and I thought that was a really awesome deal. And so big shout out to the police department for their commitment to public service. And then also I'd like to give a shout out to the folks in Recreation and Parks, especially Juan, Jose, Ricardo, and Kyle, who have been partnering with and working with the Tree Foundation and partnering in planting over 90 large 24-inch box trees throughout 9 city parks over the past year. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, thank you for your participation tonight, and thank you for staying for a rather long meeting. But have a great evening, and we stand adjourned at 7:48.
The 3:30 p.m. meeting of the Bakersfield City Council is now in session.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to call to order the 3:30 City Council meeting of May 9th, 2018. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Go,
Here.
Vice Mayor Smith, Councilmember Rivera, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Weir,
Here.
Councilmember Freeman,
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan. Here. Councilmember Parlier.
Here.
Thank you. To comply with the Brown Act, we'll receive public statements now. Please limit your comments to the workshop items only at this time. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per subject. Are there any public statements, Madam Clerk?
We have one speaker this evening, Michael Turnipseed.
Welcome, Mr. Turnipseed. Please introduce yourself.
Mayor, members of the council, your speech at your luncheon today inspired me to come, because what you talked about today and how you run Garden Pathways is exactly what the city needs to be doing. I received a recent email saying that the city has provided a comprehensive investment plan to improve the quality of life for all people in Bakersfield. Well, we have a problem with poverty, so that's how I'll tie into the presentation today. You today in your speech, ladies with a heart, said the first thing you do at Garden Pathways is you set goals. Secondly, you focus on the root issues, not the symptoms, the disease. And finally, you don't just spend money, you invest money. And that's what you really need to look at doing with the sales tax money you want to get on the future sales tax issue. Look at investment, not spending. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turnipseed. Are there any other public speakers, Madam Clerk?
There are no more public speakers.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Under workshops, we have a presentation regarding the 2018 Kern County Homeless Point-in-Time Count.
Thank you, Mr. Tandy.
Actually, Steve Tellier will be making the introduction.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. Steve Tellier with the City Manager's Office. As you're all aware, over the course of the last year, we've had several presentations before the council regarding the topic of homelessness. And the most recent presentation we had was back in February, where staff came to you and provided an overview presentation of how the city interacts with homelessness pretty much on a day-to-day basis. As a result of that presentation, it was requested by Councilmember Gonzalez that we invite the Homeless Collaborative to attend a future meeting and provide a presentation on the 2018 point-in-time count. And so today we have Lewis Gill from the Bakersfield Homeless Center and the Alliance Against Family Violence, Tina Posey and Heather Kimmel from the Housing Authority of Kern County, who will be providing that presentation for you today. And they, along with several others here in the audience, will be available for any questions you may have following the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. First, if you will allow me, I have some material for the clerk to give to the council. I think I can click. I'm hopeful that I can do this well. Is it just a right-hand click to make it go forward? It is. Whoops. All right. I'm not going to mess this up, I promise. Technical difficulties. So, Lewis Gill with the Bakersfield Homeless Center and the Alliance Against Family Violence and Sexual Assault. I am joined by many of my colleagues from the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. There is a large group of individuals that are out there doing this work day in, day out, and many of us have been doing it for a number of years because we truly, truly wish the best for those that have so few options in our home. So, what I am doing is just giving a little contextual background. It's starting in 2009, that's about, or 2000, because that's when I can start telling you what happened. That's when I arrived on the scene. Prior to that, I can't help you. So, What was Homelessness Night? What was our services? How did we react? We had a focus before on transitional housing, on programs, and on the services that we could provide. That's where the majority of our funding, which was primarily federal pass-through, was invested. The programs that we had were often what would be now considered high barrier, meaning if you were very active in your mental illness, if you were active in your chemical dependency, then you often did not get to participate in the programs. I can tell you that that has changed. That is not the way that we run our programs today. We allow people to participate. We have reduced those barriers for individuals. Housing was something that was not the first tool. It happened after we stabilized individuals. So you work with them, work with them, work with them, and then when we deemed that they were ready to be successful, then housing was made available. That has changed, primarily because of a focus from our federal government, which I'll explain a little bit later. And back then, everybody, meaning all government entities, all nonprofits that interacted with the federal government, we were operating under the same definition of homelessness. That has also changed. So, up until 2009, McKinney-Vento is the piece of legislation that directs our work. It's the overarching federal legislation that tells us, well, allows for the funding to come through and then gives us the rules and how we are to interact with that funding in order to invest and provide services. So it had these four categories: sharing housing of other persons, living in a motel or a hotel, living in an emergency shelter or transitional housing, or living in a place not meant for human habitation. Well, then that definition changed. And in 2009, it became more restrictive. So as you can see, people in shared housing were no longer considered homeless. So if you're living in a garage that someone's thrown a couple of beds up in, if you're couch surfing with your family because you don't have a place, you're no longer considered homeless. Now, the reason this is important, and just a bit of a fact, San Diego just released their census numbers. The school districts still use the old definition on how they count homeless students, right? So if a child is living on a couch, they consider them homeless. The way that the federal government requires us to do the count, their homeless census gave them about a little over 1,000 children that they considered homeless in San Diego. If you talk to the school district for San Diego, they'll tell you they have over 20,000 students. So it's off by a factor of 20. We have to figure out how to get those two to agree. So the federal government got really interested in homelessness, started making an investment. The Obama administration launched the Open Doors Initiative in 2010. This was the first time there was this federal push. There was always funding provided, but it was not as focused. Started to make it more and more restrictive how funds were invested to provide services. So it went from a service-oriented to more of a housing focus. This plan got updated again in 2012 and again in 2015. Now, because of that change to investing in housing, we did see homeless rolls fall. We saw that population diminish, but we still had work to do. So the goal is to end homelessness, right? But everybody gets a little uptight when we talk about ending homelessness, right? It's like ending poverty. The idea is that we have as few people in this crisis as possible, and that the system is sufficient to deal with the individuals entering homelessness as those that we can place out in housing. But this gives you a working definition for what we're talking about in ending homelessness. So we want those occasions to be rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. Chronically homeless, which we will define a little bit later, will have permanent housing. Chronically homeless are often the individuals that you're getting calls from constituents about. Every veteran has been identified and offered a home. Nobody that's unaccompanied youth would be unsheltered. And no families or children would be experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and all have the opportunity for permanent housing. So the federal government got more restrictive in how those funds are invested. The reason why I keep coming back to the federal government, the money that's invested by both the city and the county is primarily federal pass-through. There's not general fund money from either entity going into this situation. So they're dictating how we can spend money and then invest, what kind of programs we can create. So they now have this focus on chronic homelessness, right? We're going to move the needle on this specific population. So who are the chronically homeless? Those service-resistant, hard-to-serve individuals. Well, they've got to have a disabling condition. They've got to have been consistently homeless for a year or longer, or homeless 4 times in a 3-year period. And then there's a little bit more to the definition, but that's now who is the priority for services nationwide. It was effective. A lot of people got moved into homes. So how did it come about? It came about through this new program called Housing First. So again, we're moving away from services, we're investing in housing. It worked. It shifted money away from our ability to provide those additional needs. But we were able to invest in vouchers. So now you have a permanent ability to keep somebody housed. You have somebody that has a permanent subsidy. Or if they have income, if they have a way to sustain their own home, but they just don't have that move-in money, or they've got an old PG&E bill that they haven't been able to clean up, and so it's messing with their credit. We have rapid rehousing dollars now. And so we can invest in those individuals that not are just chronically homeless, but those that are situationally homeless, that are just experiencing it. Again, these 2 programs were effective, but they had unintended consequences. So Housing First, this is what we found. We were able to put out a cost-benefits analysis of our program. So outcomes after 6 months in housing, 98% decrease in jail times, 88% decrease in inpatient hospitalization, 28 grand a year you're saving, 87% improved health. Living on the street is fatal. That's just the truth. It takes years off your life. 94% had less problems with law enforcement. 70% of those that were mentally ill had a chemical dependency problem improved. So what have we learned through this work and over this time? Outreach to those individuals on the street is critical. We have insufficient investment in that currently. In my opinion, and this is Lewis Gill, eliminating the RDAs was a really short-sighted action. You can see the development of low-income housing tank after the RDAs are eliminated. There's just not a vehicle for the city to now invest in that type of housing. Something needs to be done. I keep hearing grumblings that something's happening at the state level, but nothing has materialized. And because of it, we have a housing shortage.
Lewis, I'm not sure. RDA, explain that.
Redevelopment agency. Okay. So the redevelopment agencies that the cities used to have, sorry about that, they were the vehicle that encouraged the investment for low-income housing, provided a subsidy to make it possible, made it make sense. Case management is necessary for somebody once you get them into housing so that they can be long-term stable. We found out that we don't have enough units available, and we need shelter beds to keep people safe until units come available. We have not invested in that in a long time. Again, it's been all invested in permanent housing. One of the things that used to just be part of our world, the feds require us to do that census, the point-in-time count. It used to just be one more annual activity. Well, back in the day, we did it every 2 years, right? Now it's every year. They're tying it to how we receive funding now. It's become incredibly important in our world. We had insufficient volunteers and our staff to get out and do the census this year. That's just the truth. We have very short time frames on when we're able to do that count. There are strict guidelines for us. And we had individuals, teams out in the field doing counts that could see additional people to count, but we flat ran out of time. So none of the service providers believe that we talk to absolutely every homeless person in this county. So the number that we are reporting are those that we could make contact with. And then the other thing, and this is just my own personal opinion, we wait for everything to go to pot before our system reacts. We're going to have to begin a conversation about prevention and helping keep people stable in housing as opposed to waiting for them to fall apart. So that's kind of an overview of the past. Kern County just did this video of the Homeless Collaborative, and that'll give you a bit of more of a current overview of what we're doing. So if all goes well, it will play for me.
You can't group people experiencing homelessness into one category, that it doesn't discriminate. You have the woman who's living in her car because she's fleeing domestic violence. You have the man who lost his job, who made great money but was laid off and just couldn't get back on his feet. You have the person who's battling a substance abuse disorder.
Homelessness is a complex social problem with a variety of economic and social causes, which include poverty, unemployment, lack of affordable housing, behavioral health, or substance use issues, among many other factors.
I know in my heart I had like maybe 2 weeks left, and I just wasn't going to be here anymore. There was just nothing left in me, and without organizations like our Homeless Collaborative, it would be impossible to get off the streets and get back to a level of functionality.
You know, we all tend to talk about the poverty level, but actually 34% of the families in Kern County do not have adequate income to provide for their family's basic needs.
Once you become homeless, it's almost impossible to get out off the streets without help. Each day, you're just trying to survive that one more day. And the next day, it's the same thing. You got to find food. You got to find a place to sleep that night without freezing to death, you know. And I slept in the dirt at night, you know, on top of blankets in the dirt, whatever. When it rains, you can't get dry the rest of the winter. When it's hot, super hot, and you have no way out of that. When it's cold, it's super cold.
It was just overwhelming to me to see that people were going to conduct their lives living that way. And so when I had those two experiences, I said, I've got to do something. There's some way I've got to do something.
Homelessness is a growing problem in our community, as it is in many others. In Kern County, individuals and agencies have been brought together to target this issue through the Kern County Homeless Collaborative.
We had our first meeting, and there must have been over 50 representatives there in that room. And we started from that initial conversation, and that built us into formulation of the Kern County Homeless Collaborative.
This collaborative promotes a community-wide commitment to reducing homelessness, as well as streamlining efforts by nonprofit providers and local governments to quickly rehouse individuals and families while minimizing the trauma and other issues caused by homelessness.
When you're dealing with homelessness, collaboration is much needed to tackle the problem. It's not just one agency doing the work, but it's many agencies. The faith community, the government community, business community, to make an impact one life at a time. But we need everybody to be engaged in something like this to really make a difference.
A 10-year plan was established to guide the collaborative on its mission to put an end to homelessness in Kern County. This plan established 3 objectives for success, focusing on homeless prevention, housing stability, and housing development. The collaborative has been able to address these objectives by developing a homeless management system and coordinate an entry and assessment system to track the numbers of people at risk and evaluate the effectiveness of the community's response.
Coordinated entry systems develop a coordinated response to homelessness. So no longer is it first come, first serve for the people who are experiencing homelessness. It's not about who they know or where they know to go to receive services. It's about responding to homelessness based on the person's vulnerability and the best resource to resolve their issue.
I think we have worked really hard at getting people into housing and working together. I think that we have really put effort into getting a by-name list together and being able to get everybody that we come in contact with into a single database, a single list, so that we can then provide services.
Full implementation is scheduled for May 2018. At-risk veterans now have access to prevention resources through the California Veterans Assistance Foundation.
We've been fortunate to make a significant
dent in the homeless population. We've housed, since 2010, over 1,500 persons have been provided housing. They're in permanent supportive housing now, whereas they were on the street or in a shelter.
The collaborative has also worked towards providing housing stability by using a housing-first approach. They formally adopted this approach in 2008 and have placed several hundred homeless people into housing since. The housing-first approach emphasizes placing people directly into affordable housing without preconditions. Not only has this approach been successful in ending and preventing homelessness, it has also resulted in significant decreases in the use of emergency medical and law enforcement services. A recent cost-benefit analysis found significant savings to the community through utilization of this housing-first model. Bottom line, it's more cost-effective to house the homeless than to leave them on the streets or in shelters. The number of permanent housing beds for homeless persons and families increased from 726 in 2010 to 1,933 in 2017. The original 10-year plan, set to sunset in May of 2018, is currently being revised to carry us into the future. The next 10 years will again be focused on homelessness prevention, housing availability, and housing development, with an additional focus on emergency and transitional housing, the implementation of a coordinated entry system, and building community support.
The issues of homelessness are very complex, and the solutions do not have one size that fit all. I see outreach as being an essential component to moving people towards the help that they need.
What we do on outreach is we try to contact those who are homeless in the community. We reach a lot of people and want to build that relationship and that trust with each individual so that it's easier to work with them. It takes about 17 contacts with an individual to engage them in services.
The coordinated entry system ensures that at-risk people are connected to appropriate services. It is a critical component for the Kern County Homeless Collaborative and other agencies to receive funding from federal and state sources. Future prevention efforts will focus on increasing access to employment through programs such as the Bakersfield Homeless Center's job programs. We intend to improve stability by increasing access to supplemental security income and SOAR technical assistance. Increasing permanent supportive housing will focus on additional resources to address homelessness in rural areas. Through Housing First programs like No Place Like Home, additional permanent supportive housing units will be created for persons living with a severe mental illness who are chronically homeless or at risk of chronic homelessness. Of course, none of these initiatives move forward without a wide network of support. The Built for Zero campaign provides assistance for directional and collaborative change.
Essentially technical support and coaching for communities. So as a community, we identify what our needs are, what our gaps are, and we have coaches through the Built for Zero campaign that help walk us through the systematic changes we need to make to achieve our goals.
The Kern County Collaborative recognizes that the homeless population is anything but static and will work tirelessly to increase resources and seek opportunities for change.
People are resilient and people do want more for their lives, and we need to be able to have the capacity to give them that, to house them, to support them, to give them that intense case management that they need to get back on their feet, to integrate back into society.
Hello, I'm Tina Posey. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak to you. I'm going to talk about the point-in-time count. But first of all, the video, Andy and everyone here, they all participate in my homeless count. And we need more volunteers, but we'll get to that in a minute. But they're all a big part of our COC and the actual physical count. So we want to talk about, it's not a complete count, it's a snapshot of what we could get that night and that morning. We would love to be able to count everyone and know exactly like how many that are really out there, but it's a limited time, limited resources, so it's just a snapshot of what we have, but it gives us a very good picture of who we have to house. The initiative initiated and mandated by HUD, we have to do it the last 10 days of January. And luckily, we don't live back east where it's freezing. Sometimes we have rain, wind, but most of the time the weather agrees with us and we're able to get out there and do the count. Every community across the country is participating, not just us. So our methodology has not changed for the last 2 years. We've done it the same way that we've done the last year and this year. And if we all look around, we all have to admit we see more homeless. They're more visible. We go from 8 p.m., we start in the shelters, and then we end at 8 a.m. with the unsheltered count from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m., depending on the number of volunteers we have. This year, like Louis said, we did not have enough volunteers. We had a lot sign up, but they didn't come to training. But the ones that did come to training, we only had about 6 that didn't show. So that was a really good number. But to be fully staffed, all the teams that I need, one of the gaps are volunteers, and we need at least about 200 volunteers. We have 19 rural communities that we go, and we survey people there. In the rural communities, if I can get a team that actually lives there, then they know where their homeless are. TAF knows every homeless person by name. Lake Isabella at the Kern River, they know they're homeless. So if we can find teams in the rural areas that actually live there, it definitely makes a difference in our count. In town, I'd like to have 40 teams, 3 people on each team. That's about 120 people. But to get 120 people, I need at least 200 to sign up. Bakersfield is a huge, huge area. I know we all know it's 8,000, I Googled it, 8,163 square miles. That is huge. We have towns out from Boron to McKittrick. Some people don't even know some of the towns that we have. So we really need more volunteers, more people to come and be a part of the physical count. Let's see. I think that was probably most of what I had to say. I just really encourage you, if you have staff, if you have family members, when we released the numbers, the news reporter didn't know he could volunteer. So it's, yes, everybody can volunteer. If you have members of your team that you can send. I know a lot of the staff do send team members, and I really do appreciate it. We have code enforcement, BPD. So please, send your volunteers so that we could get better groups and a better count. Thank you.
So here's the numbers. This year we counted 885 homeless people throughout the county. 515 of those resided in our shelters, with 502 specifically here in Metro Bakersfield. 370 people were unsheltered, with 309 found in Metro Bakersfield. So of the 885 people that our teams counted, 811 of them were counted here in Bakersfield. 61 unsheltered persons were counted in our rural communities. McFarland Delano 12, Shafter 5. I'm not going to go through the entire list. You can see it on the screen. But I want to touch back on what Tina commented. These rural communities depend on local volunteers to get accurate counts. And when we send teams from Bakersfield, we don't get a true depiction of what's going on in our rural communities. So some of the lower numbers, like Mojave, that's a direct result of us sending people from Bakersfield to find homelessness in Mojave. We just don't know where to look. Oh, I keep pushing the wrong button. So this is a chart that depicts the change from 17 to 18. Homelessness in Kern County increased by 9%. So although we don't count every single individual person who's homeless in the time frame we're allotted, we can see percentage changes. That's a true representation of what's going on because our methodology doesn't change from year to year. So there's a 9% increase overall in Kern County, a 5% increase in our rural communities of the unsheltered population, a 46% increase in unsheltered homelessness here in Bakersfield, and a 5% decrease in our unsheltered population. I'd like to point out in that 5% decrease, a big part of that has to do with the fact that 2 transitional housing programs closed between 2017 and 2018, had reduced the funding that was available to our community, and they were forced to close their doors. So it's not that less people are sheltered, it's because our program capacity was actually reduced. So we do focus our efforts on subpopulations. We are continuously working on homelessness as a whole, but there are separate initiatives for chronically homeless and for veterans, unaccompanied youth, and parenting youth. So I'd like to touch on these populations for just a moment. This year in 2018, we counted 133 chronically homeless individuals, 80 veterans, 56 unaccompanied youth, that's youth between the ages of 18 and 24, and 19 parenting youth. So that's people between 18 and 24 who have children. It's a 10% decrease from 2017 in the number of children who are homeless, 13% increase in the number of youth, a 54% decrease in the number of chronically homeless persons on our streets, and an 11% decrease in the number of homeless veterans. So although our homeless population is growing, our subpopulations, we're moving the needle with them. The efforts that we're putting in place to address these subpopulations is working. So I do want to point out some positive in these numbers. So if we zoom out from 2017 all the way back to when we first started reporting the numbers to HUD in 2007, we'll see a 58% decrease overall in homelessness. So these charts just kind of depict the overall count, the subpopulations. What I want you to take away from this is that trend line. So from 2007, we're trending down. So from 2017 to 2018, we have a spike, and it's our job to make sure that that trend doesn't continue, that our line keeps going down, that we aggressively respond to this increase that we saw this year. We put plans in place and we enact initiatives that are going to make sure that we don't start trending up. So we've been hearing a lot about people who are being dumped from other counties into Kern County and into Bakersfield. There was recently a rumor that was circulated, an anonymous tip to a local news station, that Orange County brought 200 people on an Orange Belt bus, dropped them at Riverview Park, and gave them $200 cash. That was dispelled as a myth. It couldn't be proven. And our data doesn't prove that that's happening either. The numbers that we got from the point-in-time count, 74% lived in Kern County when they became homeless. Only 26% arrived here homeless. 35% came here because they thought they had a family member they could stay with. 5% came here because they had a job lead. And 60% cited various other reasons, but only 3% said it was to get out of LA. So from 2017 to 2018, we've shown significant program growth. Our rapid rehousing program grew by 21%, and our permanent supportive housing program grew by 53%. So in 1 year to grow these programs by this percentage is huge. It shows the work that's continuing to be done by the providers in our community. In 2018, we look forward to developing 24 domestic violence beds in Delano, 18 domestic violence beds in Ridgecrest, introducing approximately 300 new housing choice vouchers into the community specifically for homeless persons. That's most commonly referred to as Section 8 vouchers. Receiving 22 new HUD-VASH vouchers for homeless veterans. Hopefully building the new No Place Like Home development, which would introduce 30 new units, and a full implementation of our coordinated entry system. So Louis touched a little bit on the gaps in his piece of the presentation, and I'm going to circle back to it. He talked about the rural development agencies and how devastating that was to the building of new affordable housing when those dissolved. But in addition to that, we've seen a 77% reduction in USDA rural rental housing loans, a 55% reduction in HUD supportive housing for the elderly, a 62% reduction in home investment partnership programs, and a 50% reduction in CDBG funding. That's nationwide. That's not local numbers, but those are the national statistics for what's going on in regards to developing new affordable housing. So here's another graph to depict it. You can see in 2016, we built 0 new affordable housing units in our community. In 2017, we built 15. So when we have 885 homeless persons that we are able to talk to, interview, and count on a given night, and we're only developing 15 new units, there's a problem, right? You can see the clear issue. We've also identified that we have insufficient outreach to identify and engage all persons living on the streets. I know some of my colleagues came before you and presented these gaps, and I would like to acknowledge and thank you for designating some of the funding that you received towards this gap. We received that notice yesterday, and we were all very excited, and we want to acknowledge and thank you for that. It's going to go a long way to help meet this gap. We also have insufficient case management services available to support the homeless persons that we are putting into housing. So the Housing Authority has realigned approximately 300 vouchers, but there's no funding for case management to go along with those vouchers. So we're asking our supportive service agencies to step up, provide intensive case management to homeless persons with no funding to do it. We know that industry standard for providing this type of case management is a caseload of 20 individuals. Our service providers are carrying caseloads of up to 40 to help meet the demand with no funding to do it. I'd also like to point out that this isn't unique to Bakersfield. It's not unique to Kern County. The state of California is in a crisis. It's not affecting our community as much as it is other communities in our state, and I think that that's because we are so responsive when we see an increase like we have. We take quick and swift action to address it. In California, 25% of the nation's homeless reside here. 50% of the nation's unsheltered are in California. 34 out of every 10,000 people experience homelessness in California. And in the entire state, they saw a 14% increase. So I'd like to ask my colleagues who are with the Kern County Homeless Collaborative to stand up with me. So we're a group of committed individuals. We're dedicated to addressing the gaps, identifying solutions to the problem. When you asked us to present the point in time count numbers to you, we responded by bringing all of the experts in this work, in this field, to the meeting to stand before you and answer any questions that you might have. We appreciate the partnership that you're providing to us and allowing us the opportunity to have this conversation with you and to continue to help us find ways to address our gaps.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kimmel, Ms. Posey, Mr. Gill, and the entire team. We really appreciate that input. And I saw that Joseph here on the left raised his hand. He's going to do the point in time count next year, right? Were you scratching your head? Councilmember Gonzalez. I made that one up, but we'll see whether he brings his team. You asked for media to come. Councilmember Gonzalez, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I speak for the entire council when I say how much we appreciate all of you and the service to our community, and what you do day in and day out is not easy work. And despite all of our best efforts, the issue continues to rise, particularly over the past year. And I understand how frustrating that is for all of us. But I want to commend all of you for all your, not only your hard work and just the thoughtfulness, but also your heart for the most vulnerable in our community. So thank you. Also wanted to recognize, if I may, all of the city staff who work day in and day out, also responding to community concerns, BPD, code enforcement. Thank you so much, and obviously community development for all their work as well, working with the collaborative. I do have a few questions for whomever. Heather, maybe you can take the first one. When we talk about where people are coming from, I hear this from people every day, that homeless individuals are coming from somewhere outside of Bakersfield. Do we know how many individuals who are experiencing homelessness in Bakersfield have come from other Kern County communities? Do we have that data?
So can I answer from here?
Can you please use the mic?
So we don't have the data on that, but what we have talked as a collaborative is our service providers seeing that when they do their program intakes. And they're not seeing it at the program level either. I think Kern County is kind of a transient community. A lot of people come here because it's affordable housing. The oil industry brings a lot of people here as well, agriculture work. But I don't think it's because they're coming here once they're homeless. You know what I mean? I don't think it's a response as I'm homeless, I'm going to go to Kern County for services. I think other things are drawing people here. I don't know, we don't have data on how many people are born in Bakersfield or Kern County and then become homeless, if that's what your question was.
Well, let me just drill down a little bit more. So within the county, do we know how many individuals who are now in Bakersfield have come from outside of Bakersfield from other Kern County communities?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We didn't analyze it that way.
Okay. Is there a potential for us to do that in the future? Or are we bound to a survey that is scripted by HUD?
No, we have the flexibility to add questions to our survey. There's certain points that we have to touch on that are mandated, but we do have the flexibility to add local questions.
Great. So we noticed a spike this past year. Do we have any sense of what some of the causes are?
So we have some anecdotal reasons why we believe that there's a spike. When I was preparing this, I couldn't find hard data to back up those reasons that we're seeing on the provider level that we believe to be the case. We know substance abuse is a huge factor in homelessness. Is substance abuse more prevalent now? Is that why there's an increase? We couldn't back that up. We know that mental illness is a huge factor in homelessness. Is there a decrease in mental health services? Absolutely not. So to say that mental illness is why there's an increase, that can't be stated. I think really it ties back to the lack of new affordable housing stock. I think that chart that shows the affordable housing, the new affordable housing going down and the homelessness going up, it's a direct correlation.
Okay. Another myth that I hear in the community is that people who are home, and this is for anyone, sorry, but people who are homeless do not want to be housed, and that it's a choice. And so from the experiences of those who are working in the field day in and day out, can you give us some of your experiences?
Sure. Diane, I know, I'm going to ask Diane to step up here with me. Come on. So Diane Contreras, if you don't know her, she's the lead of Flood Bakersfield Ministries, and their agency is the expert in street outreach and the first engagement with our homeless population. So.
To answer your question, I would say a very, very small percentage of individuals on the street do want to remain homeless. I believe that they, a lot of the times, don't have the skill set to access services, or they've fallen into a despair that they no longer have hope. You know, that this isn't going to work for them. So as our outreach workers are out there, that's really what they're giving them, right? They're giving them hope. They're engaging and they're having that human connection and that constant connection, which really leads to them transforming their lives. And it starts there. And it starts with even engaging with them, to share with them, even those who are, you know, say they want to live on the street. Our street outreach workers will even give them the picture of a home. That way, you know, they can engage and, you know, accept the thought that there is something more for them than them being on that, you know, on the streets. But I would say that is a very, very small percentage of our community that actually want to be on the streets.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. You know, I think that stat that was thrown up that it takes 17 contacts before a homeless individual moves into services is really indicative of the struggle, right, of the work that is required in order to move someone into to housing and services. It's not an after-school special. It doesn't happen in a half an hour, right, but it requires work and follow-up in a relationship.
That's right. The constant connection, building the relationship is really the key factor. And then I would have to applaud all of our community collaborative members that are behind me, because they have very actively removed barriers, and they're continuing to remove barriers, which also provides our outreach with the ability to say, no. I mean, even though they are still in their substance abuse, they can still transition into housing with support services in order to completely remove those barriers or those struggles in their life.
Great, thank you. I'm really excited about the additional dollars that will be coming to the city for community development block grant funds and that potential use for additional outreach services, which I think is critical. But what I also think is helpful, what would be helpful, is for us to really galvanize the community to be proactive and to volunteer. And so I wanted to, for anyone, get a sense of what thoughts that you might have in terms of how community members can get involved. Certainly, the point-in-time count is important, but how can community members who are concerned about the issue, want to be proactive, want to help people, how can they participate, particularly when it comes to outreach work? Where's their invitation, and how does one get involved?
I believe our new coordinated entry is really the key because it filters through one door. So as a community is educated and knows where those access points are, what that does is that allows them to then provide information that will then lead to outreach, knowing where to locate an individual and then complete an assessment. And then the ultimate goal is to link them to permanent supportive housing. So I think that's the key. And I do want to thank everybody in regards to the additional funds for outreach. I will have to say currently we really have a lack of outreach. And if you imagine those numbers that were on the board and you have one person trying to navigate all of Bakersfield to figure out that day who they're going to reach and what follow-up they're going to do and what services to provide, because you have to remember that outreach is the initial contact. So it is the beginning of the stabilization process for that person who is experiencing homelessness. So I really want to thank everyone for those additional dollars that will put more outreach workers on the streets and more boots on the ground.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Deborah Johnson with the California Veterans Assistance Foundation. We provide transitional and permanent housing for homeless veterans. Councilmember Gonzalez, I wanted to go back to a comment you had asked about do people really want to stay on the streets and why don't they want to be housed? In the veteran arena, one of the things that we see, the people before me did a great job talking about how we've changed the definition of homeless, and how all of our funding is now restricted. And when we try to put someone who maybe has a substance abuse, an active substance abuse or mental illness into housing, they're going to push back a little bit because what we're going to ask of them is very personal and private, and I don't know how we would respond. So for instance, I'm going to engage a veteran who's maybe actively mentally ill and say, I will put you in housing, but I'm going to come into your apartment twice a month. I'm going to look through your cupboards, through your closets. I want you to turn in your bank statements. You have to show me how you spend every amount of your money. Are you actively engaged in medical and mental health services? So we're invasive in their private life. And they have to get to a point where they're okay with that before they say yes to housing. So that's the difficulty sometimes we have is the population the hardest to serve, the hardest to house. They're not in an immediate mental capacity to say, yes, wow, housing sounds great, when we tell them all the restrictions that they have to agree to up front. So it's really a long process. And what we're hoping is if we can get more housing that does not have restrictions on funding, and that would come through, city and county money, we don't have to go by somebody else's definition. We don't have to do those invasive techniques into their house. Just because someone's maybe poor or mentally ill or have substance abuse issues doesn't mean that we need to treat them less than. We need to treat them like a real individual, a real person, and stop putting restrictions on them so they feel more comfortable. And I think we would see them moving into housing quicker if we lessen the restrictions that we're required to do right now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. One last question, Mayor, before I turn off my mic. There was a reference to 2 facilities that were closed as a result of lack of funding. Can someone describe those programs, how many beds, what the budget amount was, and what their scope of work was?
Neither one of the providers that operated those programs were able to join us today, so I don't have the specifics on the number of beds or the funding level.
Okay.
However, I can tell you what the organizations are, so I can ask them to follow up with you.
Perfect.
So it's Clinica Sierra Vista's Griffin's Gate transitional program and Women's Center High Desert transitional program.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Gonzalez?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm done.
Councilmember Freeman, Parlier, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo Councilman Gonzalez's comments. None of this could happen without our partnerships. Every day you're in the community and you're really doing good work. Thank you all for attending. I also want to thank our city staff too. I had a field trip in my area with an area that's has been plagued with homelessness along the railroad corridor from approximately South H to Hughes and into the Automall area. And I had several staff members out there with me, and one of the problems that I've experienced when camps have set up in the railroad area is that it is their easement, their property, and even with outreach efforts, it's very difficult to try and relocate those camps. And we've had the same problems along the freeway areas and Caltrans areas of responsibility too. I heard, I think it was yesterday, might have been the day before, that Flood was out along the freeway participating in outreach to homelessness, and I just want to thank you for that effort too. Unfortunately, they said they didn't want it, but you were there. So hopefully next time we'll get them. So a couple of questions that I have, I'm not sure who wants to answer it. Do you do any mapping as far as where the homeless are located, where the counts are done, locations within the city? I know that up there it said Metro Bakersfield, but do we show like a heat map, hot zones, locations, anything like that?
Yes, every year we update our maps. The teams actually take a small map with them and we put where the homeless are. And each year it's kind of the same areas. We have the East Bakersfield, like you said, the highways, but we've discovered that they've moved further out to the southwest now. So we try to map it out each year so that we know where to send our teams. But yes, we do have data on where they're at.
Okay, is there any way you could provide that at some point, or?
Sure, yeah, we can give copies of the maps, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
And that's one of my concerns too, is the migratory pattern of homeless as they're going. And really the railroad tracks that kind of traverse southwest, they use that as sort of a transportation, location to go all the way out, Harris, and along with the canal too. Or the river, they do the same thing.
It's amazing the way that they get the word out to each other and not have any communication, so.
Right, but for me, the farther they move out, the further they are away from resources. And again, nobody has transportation. And how do you get them back to, those so important resources? Yes, you have a comment?
I just wanted to comment that we are working to expand our current homeless management information system, our database, so it will allow us to do GPS mapping based on outreach engagements in real time. So we won't be dependent on this just once a year. We prepare these maps based on outreach data. We don't have it on an ongoing basis. We prepare it right now specifically for the point-in-time count. But hopefully in the months to come, we'll be able to pull those maps in real time.
Thank you. Has there been any partnering with KBB, Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, by any chance, with any of those people? I know they kind of have a set volunteer base, and that's why I'm asking.
They were an integral part in our job development program for the Homeless Center, and that's the level of engagement that I know with our downtown ambassadors. We also work with them.
Have you gone to one of the meetings specifically to sort of pitch, volunteerism at KBB to try and maybe get some of their volunteers too?
Specifically for the census or
Correct.
in just regular outreach?
For the census, for the
No,
point in
we
time.
did not specifically to KBB, but what we are learning this year, as we brought it up, and it was brought up several times, we're going to cast a really large net for volunteers next year because we're going to need the people.
So next year, for the pit count, is it going to, let's say I have a team of volunteers, are you going to say, oh, I'm going to be over here, or can I say I have a team of volunteers and I want to work on this specific area? Will that be allowable, or?
I'm going to have Tina talk about that because it's very specific. It's not choose your part of the city.
I really try to put the teams together of 3. I try to put someone that is in the community all the time, say someone from Flood, the homeless center, as the leader, and then I put 2 other people with them to try to get people to work together, to know each other. I do have some teams that insist on being together, so I do allow it, but I really like to mix it up and have people go out together and learn what each other does, what everyone does.
Okay, so.
But if you really have to have a certain area, you know.
Well, I asked the question because I know my ward really well.
Right.
So if I formed a team and I want to focus on my area, is that something that could be?
I would let you do it, yes.
You would, okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to make a commitment
Good
right
answer.
now that I'm going to be a volunteer for the pit count, and I'm
Awesome.
going to form a team.
The last 10 days of January, yay, 2019. All right,
So
I'll count on it.
that's all I have. Yeah, I'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor Go. Well, I too would like to express my appreciation for all of your efforts. I think you're making a bigger difference than you think, because I think our population would probably be double what it is if it weren't for your efforts. I wanted to talk a little bit about get clear on the number of homeless. Was in the census you did you say it was like 850 or some, and then like 390 were unsheltered? Can you kind of refresh me with the numbers?
Yeah, so we have 885 total persons that were counted. It was 515 in the shelter, and I believe it was 370 unsheltered. We're going to test my memory here. Go back, keep going back. There we go, yep. Yeah, 515 unsheltered, 515 sheltered, 370 unsheltered. If we zoom into Bakersfield specifically, it's 502 sheltered and 309 unsheltered.
And you projected that we would need something like 7,900 new units for sheltering people over the next 10 years?
Yes, so we did that projection based on inflow data we received from our shelters and also data we received from the street outreach workers. So when we did that projection, we took into account over a year how many people our shelters were serving, how many engagements the street outreach workers were having. So we didn't do the projection just based on the one night count.
Well, does that, I'm just trying to understand this,
Sure.
Does that mean we're going to have a tremendous growth of homeless? Were you projecting it to need 7,900? Is that a unit that's available for, is that when I think real estate, I think a unit, okay, that you have that unit, it's always available, it's like an apartment.
Right.
Because it doesn't seem like we would need 790 more per year. So I may not be understanding this projection.
I'm Stephen Pelz with the Housing Authority, so you can blame me for the numbers. So what we did is actually looked at over the course of 1 year, so what we looked at is 2017, how many people do we think actually were homeless in that year? There were several thousand, I think it was like 3,500 people in one given year that were homeless. Then we looked at what percentage of those actually would need assistance, that would need housing assistance, because some people who become homeless actually resolve that issue themselves on their own. They connect up with family or other resources. So looking at that, how many people would need housing on that year? We extrapolate that over a 10-year period, how many people will need that over 10 years, and then we factored in turnover. So we have existing housing resources that, in the course of a year, about 10% turnover, so those would be available beds, and then we look at how do we fill that gap. So essentially, there's over 7,000 beds that are needed over that 10-year period, about 700 a year.
Is that factoring some sort of growth, or would you say, hey,
No.
we could use 7,000 right now?
That's assuming we replicate 2017 again for 10 years. So it's not considering a growth in those numbers. So if we have the same number of people experiencing it, the same number of inflow. So we can't control what happens in society that results in people becoming homeless. What we're looking at is, we know there's a certain number of people that become homeless in a given year, so we looked at 2017. If that same circumstance happened every year over the next 10 years, what would the housing needs be for our community?
I'm trying to ascertain how many permanent units we need available. Is it 5,000, 7,000? You know, if you had your druthers, how many units would we have available for?
Yeah, so it's, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's about 750 per year over the next 10 years. So that's what we're projecting of units.
Does that mean we would have to build 7,900 new units?
No, so it's a combination of voucher assistance. So that includes voucher assistance that we already have, plus vouchers that we expect that we might be able to get in the future. It includes construction of new permanent housing. So we projected about 200 new construction units are going to be needed each year over the next 10 years, countywide, in order to meet that need. So it's a mix of various housing types.
So you need to build a couple of thousand units?
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how much does a unit cost to build?
Too much. It's California regulations, prevailing wage law. The average unit of affordable housing in California is north of $300,000 a unit. In Kern County, they're done for $150,000 to $200,000 a unit, all-in costs for affordable housing.
And are there alternatives? I mean, you can't even buy a new apartment complex for $200,000 a unit. I mean, no one's ever sold that much. I remember when it was $50,000, and then a record was set at $100,000 for brand-new apartments a couple of years ago. Are you able to just like buy an existing complex of 10, 20, 30, 50 units for a much lower number?
Absolutely.
If you had the money.
Yes, so acquisition and rehab of those units is one method to do it. That does lower the cost. But when I talk about all-in costs, so we talk all transaction costs, so it's legal, it's consulting fees, it's everything that's part of the package for affordable housing. We have to set aside reserves for future maintenance needs, because the rent that comes with the housing doesn't cover the ongoing costs. You have to establish upfront reserves for many costs. So that all-in cost is what I was speaking of the $150,000 to $200,000 a unit. But rehab is less expensive than new construction.
But if you could buy existing units that needed some rehab, I mean, that could cut that cost by 2/3 or half anyway. Is that, if that would certainly be something to look into. You could, stretch your dollars much further if there were existing units you could buy.
That is correct, yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Sorry, Mayor. But if I may, just ask one question, just to dovetail off of Councilmember Freeman's question. So with regard to the cost of housing, there's also the continuous support services. That's a real cost as well after we house someone. So it's not just that they're housed and we say good day. I mean, can you talk about that real cost and how long we can expect to service that?
Sure, and so when we talk about a development that's set aside specifically for the homeless, whether it's something that's acquired and rehabbed or new construction, you have to build in a supportive services budget. You have to be able to pay for it. And so those costs, essentially, typically you're having to fund those up front because you can't pay for it through cash flow unless you've got a grant or some other source. So it can become very expensive. A typical case manager, if you're talking 20 persons per case manager, that costs all-in cost of north of $50,000 when you talk about benefits and payroll taxes and everything else. So that cost adds up if you talk about on a per person basis. So when you talk about capitalizing the costs of that housing, you want to fund those services up front if you don't have some other source that's dedicated.
Thank you. Follow-up question. Are there cities, counties that fund these costs on an ongoing basis, let's say from a % of their budget that do have funds, and so let's say it takes them, I don't know, $5 million a year, so many millions a year out of their budgets, so that it, I mean, capitalizing everything up front makes it harder and harder and harder to ever do it, rather than paying ongoing if it's part of someone's budget. Are there other cities that have the money and have been able to fund this on an ongoing basis?
Yes, there are. So they're mostly the larger urban areas. You see that in Southern California. You see that in the Bay Area most commonly. So they've either established a dedicated funding source through a sales tax or other type of fee or tax that the voters have passed. Some use general fund money, but yeah, there are communities that have dedicated funding sources for services.
Thank you.
We talked about the importance of supportive services. That long journey for homeless persons is very, very important. And Mr. Baldovinos, we had a wonderful celebration recently at your place. Would you just fill in, just update the council on what happened at your place and the additional services now that are available to our community?
Sure. Thanks for having me here this afternoon. Good to be here again. It's a hot topic, homelessness. So we felt as an organization in Mission of Kern County that we wanted to do something with women and children going through recovery. So last Thursday, we opened up a facility on 2010 O Street. We bought the old Garden Community Church and the adjacent property next to it, the old parsonage that was next to it. Altogether, it's about 10,000 square feet. It's going to house up to 38 individuals going through recovery. So as of this date, we're just almost full. There was a waiting list that started back about 2 months ago. So, you know, it's been move-in day this week. It's ongoing. It's going to be something that's going to better help our community. We're seeing more and more that people are coming to the Mission specifically into our programs. They started drug addiction at a very young age. Actually, it's about 14 years of age. So we want to get it in front of that. We want to be part of the solution as an organization that's here in the community. And what a better way to start dealing with the family unit right off the bat. So we currently have a women's program, but adding the children component to it, we're going to be better. We're going to better serve the community. Is that good?
Very good, Mr. Baldovinos.
And thank you all for those that made it, and for those that did not make it to the ribbon cutting, we'd love to give you a tour in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. We are our brother's keeper, and it takes all of us for this very complex problem. I'm glad that there are people from all over our community involved. Kern Tax, thank you for your interest in this area. And as we go forth, a message I would send is that it takes all of us. So businesses, government, nonprofit, private individuals, all of us uniting together in serving the homeless, but also in changing the quality of life. So it's not only, of course, we are all called to serve our brothers and our sisters in homelessness. But in so doing, we change the quality of life for our community. And it is very comprehensive. It's a major change when we all work together in this critical area. So it is an area that I think all of us on the council hear about almost on a daily basis. I know when I'm at social events, it is the one topic that I can consistently count on. No matter where I am, somebody comes up and talks about homelessness. So let's all continue to unite, and thank you so much, Homeless Collaborative, for all that you're doing. We really appreciate it. If there is nothing else, we stand adjourned at 4:38. And our next meeting will reconvene at 5:15. Thank you very much.